This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so welcome. First night, first of many that we're going to be doing throughout this program. There are some things that I've added to this program as well that were not in the course syllabus, but will be taking place on the Sundays we're meeting in person. So on top of obtaining your advanced EMT, we'll also be doing PAIRS, ACLS, and CPR research as well. So those are all going to be part of this program. Those will all be in-person classes. So I will update the syllabus as we go and then let you know which days those are going to be on what Sunday that we already have a scheduled class for. Those will be great programs to have. Yep.
Does that mean PALS too or no?
I'm not going to use PALS. PALS is really geared more towards the paramedic. So PAIRS would be a better option.
All right.
Yep. It doesn't mean that I can't offer a PALS class on another Sunday that we're not doing anything and are not having a scheduled class if anybody wants to come down and do it. But as part of the program, we're going to do ACLS, PAIRS, and CPR. All right, so welcome to the class. All right. So we're going to be going over the orientation phase, kind of covering the clinical rotations, how things are going to work, when exams or quizzes are going to be due, and kind of go forth with that. So the instructors and whatnot, so I will be the lead instructor. My name is Kevin Romano. I am a instructor for Maine EMS along with New Hampshire EMS. Been a paramedic for 12 years, EMS and fire for 23. And I also do a lot of technical rescue stuff, college degrees and whatever not come along with this as well. My wife, Orly, she is the CFO of the company. She handles all the financial stuff. So I kind of let her just handle that. JT, who's on, I'm not sure if he's able to talk about himself or not. He's on the mobile, he might be on the road. He kind of does a lot of the planning logistics stuff, and he kind of handles a lot of the IT work as well, along with Tyler. Tyler is the deputy chief of fire rescue operations. He does a little bit of EMS instruction, as he is a new AEMT. So he'll be doing some teaching throughout the class, but more of the operational things like EMS operations and whatnot, things that he can do that are at EMT level. And then I also have some other guest instructors coming in as well that have more of a specialty in certain topics we're going to cover, so you guys get the best experience. So Tyler, the floor is yours if you want to talk about yourself, who you are, so they get to know who you are.
Sure. My name is Tyler Dutau. I've been EMS for going on 4 years now. I got my AEMT almost 2 years ago. I've been in the fire service. This will be my 6th year. So I have a fundamental background, primarily in fire, and I upgraded when one of my departments allowed me to take the EMT course. If anyone has any questions about anything, feel free to either email me or send me a text.
All right, I'm just taking notes for the roster for today. All right. On that slide also as well where the email address is to be able to get a hold of us. So now we need to know who you guys are. So I'll just call off a name. If you guys can just talk about who you are, where you're from, what department you work for, so everybody gets a chance to know who each other really is. I'll start with Bob first, for the first one on my list.
All right. So I'm Bob. Been a basic for about 6 years now. Worked for several companies. I've taken a couple of advanced classes already. Had some problems with the national registry, half of it. The written, it's not easy. So if to tell everybody, what's about it? Yeah, it's a lot, not what you're expecting. From my point of view, you all may have it easy, but I didn't. So yeah, we're going for round 3. I'm currently with Berlin EMS, and I'm just hoping to actually make it all the way through this time, and actually get licensed as a advanced EMT. I have some background in fire, about 3-4 years in Rumford Fire Department. I'm not currently with Rumford Fire, but yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
All right, thanks, Bob. Chandra, you're up.
I'm Tandra, and my study buddy, JP. The ink is still wet on my EMT cert. I've just started with action last month. I am a cert instructor and MRC instructor. I've been playing in the ER department as a registrar for the last 6 years, and I've finally gone back to my favorite billing section at another location. But I've been enjoying my weekends on the trucks.
Perfect. Evan, you're up.
Now, hi, I'm Evan. I'm homeless. I went to band camp. No, I'm kidding. All right, I've been doing this, I don't know, like 10 years. I've worked all over and also have military and gonna go on to paramedic school right after this. So,
Awesome. George.
Yeah, my name's George. Been doing this for approximately 3 years as an EMT. Right now, I work for Action in North Conway, and I've worked around to a couple of different companies and whatnot, and really enjoy it.
Awesome. Let's see. Caitlin. I see you're unmuted and we just don't hear anything. I think she's trying. We're just, can anybody else hear her at all?
that's a negative, Kevin. I think it's
Nah, that's a negative over here too.
All right. Caitlin, we got to figure out what's wrong with your mic. We'll get back to you though. Kenny.
Hello, my name's Kenny. I'm 3 years sober now. No, I'm just kidding. I work for Oxford Fire Department. I've been an EMT for 4 years now. I'm a lieutenant over here. I've been in the fire service for 14. That's all I really got.
Perfect. All right, Kobe.
Hey, I'm Kobe. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I'm Kobe. I work for Berlin and Action down North Conway. I've been in and around the EMS for about like 2 years. Been an EMT for about 6 months. So yeah. That's it.
Perfect. All right, Matt. Matt O'Connor. Matt.
My name is Matt. I'm currently working with Action Ambulance, mostly in the Ospey Valley. I've been doing this for about, I think this is my 7th year. I've been licensed as a basic for 6 years.
All right. Rosa, you're up.
Hi, my name's Rosa. I currently work over at Stewart's Ambulance Service. I've been doing this going on my 5th year. I did also take the A. Again, that last written is probably the hardest part. And then, of course, unfortunately for me, COVID hit and they kept pushing my exams back and back till I just kind of went out the window at that point in time. So kind of, yeah, going again and hopefully going to go all the way through.
Awesome. All right, Sean, you're up.
Hi guys, my name's Sean. Been fire service approximately 30 years. Been EMT for 20, just hit my 20th year. I'm a firefighter EMT for the County of Durham. I also work for Action. I've been with Action since we took over the contract in the Ospey Valley. Yes, Kevin is my partner on Tuesdays. Lucky me. What else? I like Green Aliens. If Kevin lets me have too many, to the great EMT Holio. You might be able to, guys, might be able to see that this fine kind of by force. But that's all really about me.
Thanks, Sean. Oh, here we go. All right, well, welcome aboard, everybody. Like I said, we're missing 5. I gotta find out where they went to. We're trying to reach out to them as we're going through the program. Tyler, if you want to help with that. I had their names written down over here. All right, let's go to the next slide here. So as far as facilities go, as of right now, we're going to be in Tamworth at the 570 Plains Road location. If that were to change into a different building, it would only be within a 10-minute drive from the current station we're at. So again, still going to be in the vicinity. It's not going to be a massive change. And we'll go over all as far as the apparatus stuff and everything else. When you are in our stations down here, doing the practical stations and whatnot, please do not just start rummaging through people's stuff. Obviously, stay out of the ambulances. Please do not take them for joy rides during your lunch break. Try to make sure the station is left cleaner than you came into it. Make sure you pick up after yourself. Smoking, obviously not allowed in the building. Parking at the current Tamworth location we're going to be at the Action Ambulance building, parking is out on the back of the building as well. There are 2 bathrooms that can be utilized in that building as well, and plenty of exits, bay doors, and everything else we can get out of in case there's an emergency. All right, so this is where we go over the website, but we'll kind of wait till towards the end to kind of do that. And I'm going to turn the screen over to Tyler so that he can log in and do that. So as far as course paperwork goes, and clinical paperwork, so we're going to go over some of the course stuff. I did email that stuff out to you guys all through forms. So please make sure you get those in. I have to look at the actual tally and who's done what and who's got stuff completed. Please take the time to get those in, the waiver of liability form and everything else. Because this is an advanced EMT program, there's a lot more required because we're going to be spending time in hospitals. And one of the requirements for the hospitals for clinical time is your COVID vaccine with boosters, and the card is actually being submitted for proof. I just got the final information in regards to the hospital, what they're looking for. And we'll kind of go over more of that here shortly, and as we go forward with the clinical rotations. As far as clinical paperwork goes, run reports, all your reports will be done through the Fire Tech Training website in the student portal under patient contact forms under your specific name. So like I said, Tyler will go over all of that with you. So be very familiar with the website and the portal. The portal will have all your information. It also has your course syllabus, student manual. I still have to put in, because it's a new website we're switching over to, I'm going to upload all these skill sheets as well. In there, you'll also find your case study submission form for your case studies that are due on a weekly basis. The portal will be found under the student portal underneath the Tamworth AEMT program, and this is the password to get into the portal. So you might want to take note of that. Like I said, this program is recorded, but you might want to just take note. So it's all capital letters, then 2022 at the end. This is how you're going to be able to access the portal, and Tyler will go over that stuff with you here shortly. This is my phone number here. This is my business line and my email address. I send out a lot of emails, so please make sure you are checking your emails on a daily basis. Please do not wait and wait and wait, because sometimes there may be some very important information coming in, or maybe a class cancellation due to an illness or a force into work or things like that, where I couldn't find someone else to come in and cover the lecture. So please make sure that you are paying attention to your emails. And then also, I do respond back to text message pretty well. So like I said, this is my business number, which is a cell phone as well. If you do receive a message back and it comes from a 432-7318, that's my personal line. Sometimes I forget my business phone at work, or on the table at work if I get a call or whatnot, and then I reply back to you guys on my personal number. But just please make sure you stay in good communication with me in case something is changing. Dr. Scott Orr, he is our company medical director for Fire Tech Training. He's a physician over at Huggins Hospital. And he's been my medical director now for about 4 years. These are our clinical sites we're going to be utilizing. So we have Action Ambulance Service, the New Hampshire division, so North Conway, Ossipee, and Tamworth. We have Berlin EMS. We have the Stewart's Ambulance Service out of the Lakes region only, not the Seacoast. Raymond Ambulance Service over in Raymond, New Hampshire. And then because of one of our students, he got me the contact information to get Littleton Fire Rescue as well. So they're another potential option. It's kind of far away for some, but some people live up in that area, can try the Littleton and get some more experience as well with a busier service. And then we have Huggins Hospital, which is in Wolfboro, Memorial Hospital, which is in North Conway, then Littleton Hospital as well for our clinical rotations. Anybody have any questions with that at all? Not seeing any questions pop up. Also, with that being said, if you know of another hospital that wants to sign on or another service that you want to do ride along with, put them in contact with me and I can absolutely get it set up so that way you can do ride time there. This is just who we currently use.
And they have to be in New Hampshire, right?
They have to be New Hampshire, yes. This is a New Hampshire program.
Kevin, do you think that there's any way that we could get like the Concord, something in the Concord area? Because that's where I'm living at.
I can try to see what's over there for me to be able to get an. You talking about hospital time or ambulance time?
Hospital time. I will probably do my, well, I'm like to do my ambulance time with Action. So.
Okay. So for hospital time, I don't have a problem with that. If you can obtain the contact information for Concord Hospital, actually, I can reach out to Craig and see if we can put students over there because I know Craig pretty well. He's
Okay,
the EMS
great.
for the 3 hospitals through the Concord system. So I'll reach out to him next week and see if we can get it set up over there. But if we can't, I'll let you know.
Okay.
These are the required books. Again, the AOS Advanced Emergency Care and Transportation of the Sick and Injured 4th edition. We are using the 4th edition, which is the newest edition for the program. So you guys are going to get the newest information. The AOS Navigate 2 Premier Edition platform. That platform has a digital book. So 2 of you have requested no books. So I can't order them now as part of the package deal. The other 13 of you ordered books and they'll be in, they should be shipping today. So it should be in a couple days. Once they come in, I'll let you guys know where you can pick them up. In those books, there'll be access codes. So those of you who signed in probably said, oh my God, it's going to expire in October. The codes that I got, because we got them so late in the game, those codes are all temp codes. Yeah, I'll work on one with Douglas Hospital too, Matt, as well. Okay. The American Heart Association CPR course student manual. These are books you guys will be responsible for on your own. It's up to you if you would like to get them or not. The books do help for the ACLS. The PAIRS is a 2015 version still. So the CPR and the PAIRS program is not up to date, but the rest of the program is. So again, these are all different books that you can purchase on your own as far as different textbooks. And then the Advanced Cardiac Life Support 2020 manual. All right. Prerequisites for the program. High school GED, high school diploma. You are required to have your ICS 100, 700 and your Hazmat Awareness 160. For those of you who have taken the New Hampshire EMS program, you should already have these done as a part of the EMT curriculum of required programs. I do need to have these resubmitted back to me though, so you guys need to obtain these. Now, for some of the old guys in the room, including myself, I'm sure people have taken ICS a long time ago and maybe have lost certificates. It's okay if you've lost them. Just get a hold of FEMA and have them send you a transcript of all your classes. Now that will be suffice because they'll show those classes on there. Criminal background checks are required for clinical rotations. You guys have to obtain a criminal background check. For the main people who live in Maine, it's very easy to obtain because you can get that through the website. I believe New Hampshire is a little bit harder to obtain those. But again, I'm not a I'm a newly New Hampshire resident, so.
So Kevin, on the website, what's the website we got to look for over here in Maine?
I will send that to you guys via email.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll take care of that for you. So Kenny, yes, that would count your hazmat stuff. So if you already have hazmat training certificates, send them in to me. All right, so Tyler will send out an email to everybody in a group email in regards to all the New Hampshire background checks. As far as you have to have a current NREMT certification. Everybody in this class does have it, so which is good. You don't have to obtain a license. You have to have the certification to take the AEMT though. And this program meets or exceeds the National Registry core curriculum for the AEMT. And the course will give the student skills and knowledge necessary to move forward as an entry-level provider in the state of practice. Should be entry level. I should have updated that as an advanced level provider in the state. This, like I said, this is a New Hampshire program that does allow you to obtain Maine licensure or Massachusetts licensure as well, if you'd like to get that through your National Registry certification. As far as grading goes, you have to maintain 80% or higher throughout the program. If you drop below an 80, that can be terms for dismissal from the program, okay? Now, I'm not gonna be that kind of hard ass. So with that being said, you have to maintain an 80. If you're dropping a little bit below, I'm gonna have a conversation with you and say, hey, listen, you gotta bring those grades up a little bit, all right? But if you're sitting around the 50s or 60s, there's no chance of bringing your grades up that high. Quizzes are worth 30% of your grade, right? Quizzes are open book, and you get 3 attempts per quiz. So there's no reason why you shouldn't get 100 on every quiz that's there. Case studies are worth 20% of your exam or of your grade, and we will show you how to access the case studies. Exams are worth 40%, and then attendance and participation. So, like I mentioned before, if you are unable to attend a class, as long as you let me know what's going on and keep me posted, all right, it's considered a excused absence. If you just don't show up and don't communicate, that's unexcused. 2 unexcused absences will drop your grades, right? And actually, from what the state standards are, technically I'm supposed to dismiss you from the class, because then at that point in time you've missed too much work. So please, at all attempt, let me know what's going on. Keep me informed so I can make it an excused absence. And remember, all these lectures are recorded, so you can go back in and watch them so you're not going to miss anything. Health forms, I did email those out to you guys. Those have to be completed because the clinical sites for the hospital are going to be looking for your immunization records before you can start clinical time there. So please make sure you get those in as soon as possible, 30 days after the start of class. So in 30 days, I need to get those forms submitted to me. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be on that specific form. If you have all that documentation, send it in that way, or if you get it from your doctor. But we do need something showing and signed off by a physician that you've met the requirements of the health forms. The only thing that I believe is not on my health form that I need to update, which I completely spaced about, is your COVID vaccines. And the hospital is also requiring flu vaccines now too. That's the most latest one we got from Littleton. Student evaluations, remember you are responsible for all materials covered in the assigned text, laboratories, and class sessions. Course evaluations will be based upon assigned readings and lecture materials, as well as the detailed course objectives that we have. I am going to teach you stuff based on the presentations that we have. We are not going to read each page of the book word for word, because that would take 500 to 600 hours to get through. I'm going to teach you the high points. I'm going to teach you the stuff that you guys need to know with this program. There's going to be some things that might be on a quiz that might be in your reading that we did not cover. Something more minuscule as far as that goes. So please make sure that you're doing your assigned readings, right? Now, obviously there's some leeway with this one here because we just got the platforms and the books up and running. Quizzes will be given on a regular basis throughout the course. The quiz format will be both written and practical skills. Practical skill examinations are done on our practical days. At the end of the program, you have to pass each practical station twice with 100% competency, right? 100%. You cannot miss anything on your skill station in order to pass this program. Now, you get more than 2 chances? Absolutely. But you have to go through 2 at 100% in order to pass the course on our final skill day. And we're going to prep you to get to that point as we go through the program. As practical skills or exams are done on a pass-fail basis. Quizzes are due on Fridays. The quizzes will be posted on the AOS platform under the quizzes folder. They open up Friday at 10 p.m. after the last lecture for the week, and they close the following Friday at 6 p.m. Does everybody understand that? Any questions with it? Please ask now.
So if we have a class on Wednesday, like tonight, we have until Friday by 10 p.m. to complete them.
So we go week to week.
All right.
So this week we have Wednesday, Friday classes, right? So we have chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Friday night at 10 o'clock, that quiz opens up for chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you have 1 week to complete that.
All right. Got it.
So you have 7 days to complete your quiz.
Fair.
Okay? And you have 3 attempts, and it's open book, and it's not timed. Exams are timed. Exams are not done throughout the entire week. They're done on a specific day. And those are all listed on your syllabus. It will open up. It'll be open for 3 hours. And then the exam will shut off. So you have a 3-hour time limit for when you open it up. And those will be done on specific days. I shouldn't have told you 3 hours. 3 hours is for the class final. It's an hour and a half for exams. You have to participate. This is not a class where you're going to sit quiet in the background, right? That's why we have moderators to kind of listen to make sure that you guys are doing something. Now, if you can't speak or your computer doesn't have a microphone for some reason or it's not working, that's what the text box is for. And I have moderators that monitor this kind of stuff to make sure you guys are participating in the class. So please make sure that you participate. So we already talked about the final examination. You're gonna have to go through all the different skills and pass each one twice. All right, clinical rotations. This is very, very important to make sure you hit all of these. And Tyler will go over this stuff with you guys and how to find it on the website here shortly at the end of this. In order to successfully complete the course, this is clinical requirements, not the didactic. The student must complete the following. You have to do 150 hours of clinical internship. 75 hours in the hospital, 75 hours on the ambulance. And you must have a daily contact form signed by your preceptor with all the assessments and skills documented. Then you have to enter them into your folder on the portal. If you do not have a signed preceptor form, that day does not count. Does everybody understand that? I gotta make that very clear. You do not have the form signed, the clinical day does not count.
All right. So if we do clinicals tonight and we have to have them in by tonight, or can we submit them tomorrow?
You can submit them the next day. But you have to have the clinical evaluation form signed by your preceptor.
Done.
The skills that you are required to do. Medication administration, you have to have 15 med administrations. This goes by the National Registry. They can be intravenous, intramuscular, interosseous, or intranasal administration. You can only use normal saline twice. Okay? So you can't hang 15 bags of saline and count that as 15 med administrations. I'm not going to accept that. All right? You have to actually have med administrations, but you can use saline twice. Oxygen does not count. All right? Oxygen is not a medication administration for the state.
Does the med have to be in your scope of practice?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, you may use medications within the AEMT scope of practice with the exception of oxygen. So again, oxygen does not count as a med administration. But if you give glucagon, aspirin, nitro, epi, cardiac epi for cardiac arrest, but that is a New Hampshire med, right? Those do count. Hold on one second, guys. I gotta mute for a second. One of the students just called and said they're having a hard time getting into it, so we're trying to work with her now to get her in. All right, intravenous access. You have to have 30 successful IVs. Remember, unsuccessful do not count. It's okay if you miss. I'm expecting you guys to miss. It's okay. You're brand new at this. But you have to have 30 successful live IVs, whether it be in the ER or on the ambulance. All right, you have to have 20 ventilations via the following: BVM with a mask, a BVM with an SGA, which is a supraglottic airway, like a King or a iGel. Or if a paramedic intubates or they intubate in the emergency department, you can BVM through an intubation tube prior to them putting them on a ventilator. You also have to have 10 12-lead acquisitions. With patient contacts, you have to have 10 chest pains, 10 respiratories, 10 altered mental status. You have to have 10 patient contacts between newborn and 17 years old to meet the pediatric assessment. You have to have 10 adult contacts between 18 years and 64 years old. And you have to have 10 geriatric contacts, 65 and above. And you have to have 15 team leads. Team leads are when you run the call, when you are in charge of the call. Now, if it's a paramedic level call, I get it. It's not going to have you in charge. Anything that can be handled at the advanced level or down, you have to be in charge of that call. You got to make the calls on what you're going to do. You come up with the treatment plans, and they can sign you off on a team lead. Any questions with that at all? Everybody good?
So for a geriatric call, can I put my husband down as being the patient after I give him a heart attack?
Probably going to have to happen.
Well, he is geriatric, so.
All right.
Kevin,
On that note, yes, someone's talking here? Sean. Okay.
real quick, all these skills you want us to get, they can be split up between the hospital and the ambulance.
That is correct.
Okay.
Now, you cannot, and I have to make this mention too, if you are working on shift and being paid, you cannot do anything as an advanced EMT. You're not there as a clinical provider as far as a student, okay? So if you get caught doing IVs while you're on shift being paid as a second provider, that is grounds for immediate dismissal of the class, from the class. You have to be a third ride person on the truck, okay? Please make sure you do not go outside of this. And that is not a rule that I'm making. This is a rule from the state and the National Registry, because then you're practicing without a license to provide that standard of care. You're only covered underneath the student, but when you're there as a paid employee, unfortunately, it doesn't work. Now, if you're riding as a third, so I'm gonna use Kenny as an example because he works in Oxford. So if he were to go to United Ambulance, let's just say United, or let's say Action Ambulance, he comes over here to do ride time, and Oxford Fire is paying him to be there as part of his clinical rotations because he's working, that's fine. But he cannot be at Oxford Fire working as an Oxford Fire firefighter EMT providing advanced level care. Does that make sense? Anybody? Okay, feel free to put it in the chat box too. I'm watching, everybody's saying yep, yes. Okay, I want to make sure that works out because I want to make sure you guys understand. Please do not go outside of your scope of practice unless you are working during clinical rotation. Now, here comes the interesting part. When you are in a hospital, you're working under the direction of a physician. So they may ask you to give a medication not within your scope. There's nothing wrong with giving other medications. Some might be like Solumedrol or dexamethasone, which are steroids that can be utilized for respiratory distress. That's fine. Please do not give a controlled substance. Okay? No narcotics, no benzos. Okay? Ketamine is out. All right? Please do not give anything that's controlled. And they probably wouldn't let you do that anyways. But if the nurse says push it, tell them you're not allowed to do those. No controlled substances. Okay? Do not put yourself in a situation. And if they force go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask if NEBs count as a medication administration.
Yes, they do, because it's albuterol or duoneb, using a steroid and a sympathomimetic.
Okay.
So absolutely, yeah, NEBs do count. And I should have put that down, George, and that's my mistake. Completely overlooked it, but yes, I should have put down inhalation on there, and I'll update the student handbook for that. All clinical documentation will be completed on the company website, firetechtraining.com, underneath the programs tab, which Tyler will go over with you. If you have any questions, contact the clinical coordinator, which is me. Now, clinical prerequisites. The following is required for in-hospital and out-of-hospital rotations. You have to have a proof of COVID vaccine with a booster, completed health form. You have to have proof of liability insurance through your fire EMS service, or you can purchase your own malpractice insurance through HPSO at $40. Okay, they recommend having, I want to say it's like a $3 million umbrella, and that usually costs like $40 a year. Highly recommend, even if you're not in this class, to get help to get your insurance. Okay. You have to have the criminal background check, and for the hospitals, you have to have proof of health insurance as well. I just saw that in the most recent contract the hospital wants to sign with us. You have to have proof of your own health insurance in case something happens. So as we get closer, I'll put out a more detailed list of things that are required. Attendance policy, we already covered this year. 2 unexcused absences will be deemed ineligible for state licensure and removed from the course, which means that you have to communicate with me. Please communicate, let me know what's going on. Right? We at Fire Tech Training do not discriminate in its employment or educational programs on the basis of age, race, color, gender, sexual orientation, national origin, disability, or religion. Fire Tech Training complies with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Title IX Education Amendments of 1972, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the American Disabilities Act, ADA of 1990. If you have a disability, I'm not asking you to blurt it out. If you need me to give you more time, if you need me to work with you, if you have a disability, I have to have proof of that disability from your physician. Okay, so you have to give me paperwork documenting the disability so I can give you the time that you guys are required for testing. If you need certain exams read out loud to somebody else, we can make arrangements for that kind of stuff, but I have to have that in writing by a physician to be able to honor that request. Dress code. Because we are now moving into the advanced level, we have a dress code that has to be followed. All right. T-shirts, shorts, jeans, closed-toed shoes for all practical session days. Reason why t-shirt or shorts are on there because we do classes sometimes over the summertime. Please do not wear sandals, open-toed shoes, anything that could hurt you because we're going to be doing practical skill stations that could involve you being doing some lifting or anything else. Okay? When you are working in the ER or you are on an ambulance, you have to wear the provided polo shirt that will be provided to you. Those have been ordered today, and they usually take a couple weeks to come in. They'll definitely be in way before our first day that we meet up. Right? Those shirts are for you to wear during clinical rotations. You can wear them on the practical days if you'd like to, but you have to wear those along with an ID badge that I'll be making for you guys as well. Right? If you are not wearing your ID badge and you're not wearing EMS pants or black closed-toed non-mesh shoes or boots and your company polo shirt, and it gets reported back to me, they can be cause for dismissal from the program because we're not in proper uniform in the hospital. Hospitals and clinical ride sites require us to have ID badges and be identified as a student. All right, so we have to have full identification. All right, so this is the hybrid online lecture stuff. So each student is required to have a webcam so the instructor may watch the student. I can't see that from here. Like Kenneth, you guys log in with webcams. I'm not a big stickler on webcams. If you want us to look at you, you can, but I do need you guys to participate. The student must respond via online chat box every 10 minutes with a response that coincides with the current lecture topic. All right, so you guys have been responding. If you haven't been, you need to step up because Tyler is monitoring that. Instructors have the right to call on any student in the program and ask questions based on the current lecture. So I can pick on anybody that's here. Fire tech training will have a secondary instructor to moderate, which we have responding in accordance with the 10-minute rule. If the student does not respond, the moderator will then text the student in a private chat to check his or her status. If the moderator has to check in with said student again, the student will not receive credit for that day, resulting in an absent mark. And you do not want to have an absent mark. If you're on shift and you're in the program on shift, I fully understand that. If you have to take off for a call, then shoot me a message. Let me know you're leaving and let me know when you come back. Okay. Hi, Jen. I just saw you popped in.
Hi, Kevin. I've been here for like the last 10 minutes-ish.
That's okay. If you could just introduce yourself to the group, how many years of experience you have as an EMS provider and where you work.
Oh, hi guys. I'm Jen Cayley. I've been an EMT for 8 years, and I currently work for Action EMS out of Wilmington.
Perfect. Welcome aboard, Jen.
Thank you.
All right.
I just sent you a text, Kevin.
Oh, I just got it. All right, we'll discuss that a little bit later. So there's a student handbook and the waiver of liability that went out. Everybody should receive that by email. Did anybody not get that? Let's see here. I see no responses and no one asking for anything, so I'll take it everybody received the email and is filling stuff out. All right.
I think you already got mine, Kevin.
Yeah, I have to go through it all and just take a look. It all goes to Google Forms. I just got to bring it out and then get them good. So I see Rosa sent that already submitted. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So the waivers of liability, we already covered that. You guys already saw that. Rosters. So I take care of the rosters as we go through the program for the virtual stuff. When you're in person, there'll be a sign-in roster that will be on the table as you walk into the space we're doing the class, the practical evolutions. You have to sign in and sign out when you leave. We already talked about medical evaluations. We already talked about clinical rotations here. If you have any clinical questions, you need to come through me. All clinical hours and contacts must be completed by the end of the program to pass the program. Without the hours and contacts, you cannot sit for the class final. Now, if there are certain extensions I can give. You obtain COVID through the class and you can't make clinicals. You get injured, back injury, you're out for 3 weeks to a month and you miss clinical rotations. All right, death in the family. You have to communicate with me so I can extend your time. All right, but I cannot pass you for the program until all your clinical hours are completed and entered. And that's where I can go on the National Registry and approve for you to sit for the national exam. Clinical hours must be complete. I talked about on there. Clinical evaluations must be completed and signed by an FTO for your contact hours to be valid. Clinical attire must be worn in all clinical rotations. If you are unable to attend a clinical shift that you have scheduled, you have to let me know right away. Please do not be a no-call, no-show to a clinical site. Remember, there are other people that are also fighting for their spots, especially us with Action, where we have multiple programs that come in and ride with us. Multiple programs do, from paramedic programs down to EMT, right? And I'm the one that does all the scheduling for that, being the clinical supervisor for Action. So I handle all the scheduling for it, right? And yes, I do give my students more opportunities, I should say, to ride with us. We talked about uniforms, which are provided. The fire tech EMS program uniforms are required for all clinical rotations. Those are being ordered. As far as Facebook, social media, remember that we are bound under HIPAA laws. No posts or pictures from clinical sites. This will get removed from the program immediately. If you want to post at Action Ambulance for clinical rotations today, that's fine. Please do not start taking pictures of calls, locations that you're at, posting that you had, I had a 79-year-old female today that went into cardiac arrest. We had a code save. Please do not put that kind of stuff on Facebook. Your best bet is stay off of it. As far as cell phones and mobile devices, laptops are allowed for classroom sessions for note-taking and presentations. You're more than welcome to use them. Obviously, we have to for these anyways. But cell phones, please make sure you turn those off. Not turn them off, but turn them on vibrate or silent while you're in class or at the clinical sites. Please do not disturb other people. All right, we'll fly away. Any questions at all? All right, I got to see how to turn this over to Tyler so he can show you guys the website. All right, so Tyler, it should be over to you. And it's still recording, so we're good.
I just had a quick question because I'm actually on shift, working. I'm in between patients right now.
Yep.
How long is orientation, and how do you want me to notify you when I'm coming and going from class?
So there's a text box you can go into.
Okay. Oh,
And
I
just
see it up top.
shoot me a chat saying you're headed out.
All right, great. Thanks.
So Tyler's going to share his screen with you guys so you guys can see the website and everything else that he has to show you.
Can everyone see the website?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is the homepage of the website. When you want to get to your portal, up the top, there's a portal page. Scroll down to the EMT, Canada EMT portal. It'll ask you for a password. Password in all caps, FTT AEMT 2022. There we go. This is where everything you're going to need is going to be. Student manual, course syllabus and schedule, your clinical evaluation forms, and your case study form.
Tyler, go ahead and open up the case study form so people can see what it looks like.
Case study?
Yep. So as you guys are in here looking at the case study form, you put down your name, the date you submitted it, the case study chapter number, and I'll show you guys how to access those for the case studies. And then where it says enter case study submission here, that's where I want you guys to put all the answers to the case study that you guys are reviewing. I'll take care of that Evan right now while Tyler keeps going.
Right. Underneath everyone's name, there's two links, a field skills and a hospital skills. Those will open up a form, and you have to have this filled out. There's multiple pages of the form, and once you fill out the entire form, it'll let you continue. Same thing for your hospital skills. It'll open up a form, and then you continue. Down here is going to be where you're going to find your class lectures. If you miss a class or you want to revisit a lecture, they will all be uploaded here on YouTube. Anyone have any questions about the portal?
This portal is going to be like your hub to all your information you need to enter stuff in. Okay. Please make sure that if you're doing hospital time, you click on hospital skills. And if you're doing field time in the ambulance, you're doing field time, field skills. They're set up differently. Right. This is kind of like FizzDap, but I made my own program. Right. With that, it tracks everything that you're doing and goes into a spreadsheet so you can track all your skills individually.
Okay, so if we have to have a form that needs to be filled out, we have to pull it up on this site, open that up, and then do it on the computer?
No.
Or can we
print it off? So Tyler, go ahead and open up the clinical paperwork. So you have to get this form here completed.
Okay, perfect.
Recommendation: take notes on what you're doing. If you work at a busy day and you have 6 patient contacts on the ambulance, you have to write 6 different narratives. Okay, these are basically the field internship, the field skills is like a run report. I set up like a run report. Okay, so you have to actually write a full narrative. For the patients in a hospital setting, there's no narratives. Okay, because you may see 30 patients. I'm not going to write 30 narratives. There's no point. That's more skill documentation. But in the ambulance, you have to write narratives. Okay, it's basically a run report. This form here that it's on the screen now, that you have to have that filled out by every preceptor at the end of your shift.
Okay, awesome.
You have more than the amount of skills you have there. Print off 2, 3 of them. Bring to an ambulance shift.
Perfect.
Especially for hospital shifts, because you may end up doing 20 IVs. Depends on what hospital you're with and how busy it is. So print off enough forms. Get a folder. Depends on what hospital you're with and how busy it is. So print off enough forms. Get a folder.
If anyone has any issues with the portal, with getting enough forms, contact myself or Kevin. We can get you forms if you don't have a printer. If you have any issues getting onto this site, let us know. The earlier, the better.
And I'll leave it here for a minute, Tyler. Where it says clinical skill forms and it has your name listed, these are all the people that are currently enrolled in this class. So Evan, if you wanted to fill one out and you said, I'm going to go with the Georges, that will log underneath George's specific folder. So make sure you log into your own. Okay. So where your name is, those are yours below it. Don't go to anybody else's. And when you open it, go ahead and open up Evan's, Tyler, for field skills. You'll notice up in the top, it says Evan Russell. That's his. So you'll know if you chose the wrong one. If you did, just close out of it. It doesn't save until you submit it at the end.
If for some reason that you open up yours and it comes up with someone else's name, contact me via email and I will fix it.
Tyler, Rosa said it won't let her into the portal. It's Rosa. My goodness, I can't speak today. Rosa is having a hard time accessing the portal. So Rosa, I'm going to have Tyler work with you directly. Tyler, if you want, I'm just going to take back the class and I'll continue on. All right, so the website. There's a second website you guys need to be familiar with. This is the JB Learning Portal. Right now, these are the following people that have logged in. What was that? Oh, stand by. That'll be better. There you go. I clicked the wrong application. My apologies. All right, so if you guys have your computers open, go to JB. If you haven't done it yet, go to jblearning.com. That's how you're going to access your AAOS Navigate portal. You need to be familiar with this. This is where all your quizzes, exams, presentations, everything is your audiobooks. All that stuff is located here, including your case studies as well. So with that being said, George can't get on the portal either. Okay. So Tyler just posted the site up for you guys. This is what it's going to be currently on the chat group until the official transition goes over from Wix to the new system that we're utilizing. Okay, so back to this here. These are the people that have currently logged in with the access code. If you are not on this list, you need to make sure you get this done. This is where all your stuff is going to be. Okay, so please use your access code, log in. It's going to show you that it expires in October. That's perfectly fine because once the books come in, your new access codes will be there. And those who did not order books, I believe it was Jen and George. I have access codes coming for you. They've been ordered. So once I get them through email, I'll send you the new access code to update it. All right, so with that being said, let's get into the actual program. So in here now, you'll notice this is looking at what you guys will see. This is not the instructor side. You'll see quizzes, exams. Under quizzes, you'll notice quiz 1 is up here. If you open it, it's not going to let you take the quiz. It'll say quiz will not be available until Friday, September 30th at 10 p.m. The quiz will close Friday, October 7th at 6 p.m. And it's going to be the highest grade that it saves, okay? So you have 3 attempts to take each quiz. So if you take it without, I would recommend taking the first one without using your book and see how you do. Test yourself. Find out what you got wrong and then go back and research the ones that you got wrong. That's what I would do if I were you guys. All right, so that's that one there. The next one here is called test prep. Test prep is something you should be very familiar with. Utilize it. Test prep is a separate website that's part of the JV Learning. I'm going to use a student here so you guys will see it a little bit differently. You can create your own AEMT exams. These questions are very similar to the National Registry. Okay, this is all what you guys paid for. You paid for the premier edition of the system. You guys get all the additional add-ons. So create new practice tests. You can do a complete assessment test if you want, like this here. And it'll give you a 150 question exam. So which of the following terms related to respiratory quality describes reduced tidal volume? I'm going to click sighing. I know that's not correct. And at the end of it, it will show you what you got wrong. If you create your own exam, if you go back, I go back one here. Let's see. Where you create a practice test at some point in time when things unloading. If you get one wrong, it actually tells you where to look in the book, like what page, and then from there it'll also tell you why it was wrong and why and what question is right and why the answer is right. So it actually goes in depth to help you study, which is a great tool to have. All right, next section here. Move this out of the way. Soft skill simulations, virtual ride-alongs, the different videos, the virtual mentor lecture series. All this stuff is there to help you learn how to be an AEMT on top of what we teach you in lecture and what we teach you in the practical sessions. Tonight we're working on EMS, or Chapter 1 EMS Systems, Chapter 2 Workforce and Safety Wellness. If you open up that section, all right, you'll have learning objectives. This is your ebook. Okay, so those of you who didn't want books, you can look at the ebook. It opens up on a phone, iPhones. It's compatible to all different devices. Your flashcards. Oops, sorry about that. Your audio book, so it actually reads you the entire chapter. The other part is your case studies. This is where you guys need to make sure you're doing. This is where your first case study is due. All right. So you're going to log in. You're going to click on case study. It will open up a presentation and a PowerPoint view. You guys see that okay? All right. So basically, you're going to come through here. You're going to read everything that's here, and then where it's questions, who typically regulates appearance issues, including uniforms, hair length, and tattoos. Okay. What act ensures patient privacy? You're going to answer those questions. Under the case study submission form on Fire Tech Training's website. Everybody got that? Yes, yes. I'm seeing yeses from everybody. Okay. So go right down through. Go through all the different case studies, answer all the questions, and then hit submit. Perfect. I like it. That's how you find your case studies. They're located inside the JB Learning site. In here. Now, for tonight, for example, we're going to be covering Chapter 1. So you can actually click on slides. Maybe. There we go. And you can actually look at the same PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to be going over tonight. So you guys have access to everything. There's really nothing hidden, all right? It's all there for you. So take the chance to utilize what's in front of you and what you guys have. Any other questions at all before we get started? We're going to take a 10-minute break and get started on the lectures. But any questions to this point? Everybody good? Yes, good. All right. So it is 7:10. I will see you guys back at 7:20. Okay, 7:20, we're going to start chapter 1.
This conference will now be
All right,
recorded.
starting recording. Perfect. All right, let's talk about chapter 1 EMS systems. So again, the first couple of chapters that we do, EMT review, all the same stuff except they changed the word EMT to AEMT. Right, so we're going to kind of go through this stuff. I'm not going to say fly through it, but we'll get through it. Decently to make sure you guys aren't just from the first couple of chapters. All right, so let's talk about this stuff here. So I mean, obviously, we're going to be applying the fundamental knowledge of the EMS system and safety and well-being of the AEMT there. Medical, legal, ethical issues, and whatnot. Moving through. We do competencies as well, learning EMS history, EMS systems, the roles and responsibilities, of the professionalism of the EMS personnel, quality improvement, and patient safety. Also looking at research, impact of research on the emergency medical responder EMR care, data collection, along with evidence-based decision making. And that's a big thing now for us, is obviously that evidence-based decision making, because we've really gone to evidence-based protocols. And we'll talk about the different studies that happened as well with that. We're also going to cover a little bit about public health and using the civil knowledge and the principles and the role of EMS during public health emergencies. And I mean, really, we don't have to teach much for this because we literally just lived it. For those of you who have been EMS for a little while during the beginning of COVID, we've lived through the public health emergencies that were there. So, all right, so EMS is really a multidisciplinary system. So this chapter really describes different types of providers and levels of care that compose this system: administration, medical direction, quality control, and regulations of EMS systems, roles and responsibilities of the AEMT. We're going to go right down through all those. So EMS as a whole is a system of professionals and agencies. So they consist of a system of professionals and agencies working together to provide pre-hospital and hospital emergency care to the sick and injured people. So part of the local and or regional EMS system that provides pre-hospital and hospital components required for delivery of emergency medical care. So it's all part of a big system that's there, looking at the hospital to EMS to dispatch. It's all one part of a system that's governed by laws that's governed by laws in each state and typically regulated by a state EMS office. So like Massachusetts has OEMS, New Hampshire has the New Hampshire Fire Academy, New Hampshire EMS, Maine EMS is for Maine. Vermont has one up in Burlington for Vermont EMS as their state headquarters that kind of oversee and govern the things that we do based on state to state. Just because you hold a certification at the national registry level does not mean that you can practice medicine. That gives you a certification to obtain a license. So for those of you that are looking for Maine certification, we're going to give you a certification to take back and get reciprocity to obtain Maine licensure. It's the same thing with New Hampshire. It's no different with New Hampshire as well. You're going to be able to obtain New Hampshire licensure after you meet the credentialing process to obtain your national registry. So people who provide emergency medical care, except for licensed physicians, must be certified EMS personnel or a state license. Now, there are places where major disasters, they may accept your certification to do stuff. But to practice in a state, you have to fall under medical direction, whether it be done through the protocols or standing orders for us, or ones that have to be contacted through medical control. We'll get into that in a little bit. So a certification exam is used to ensure all healthcare providers have at least the same basic level of knowledge and skill. So we follow the DOT curriculum, whether it be Brady, AOS, the Tyler Dutile School of EMS. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as we meet that standard of what we're looking for. So because of this and having the same knowledge and skill, it makes you eligible to apply for state licensure after passing the exam. Licensure then is the process by which the state ensures applicant competency in the examination setting. So you're going to have a practical exam and a written exam, and then they say, okay, well, the state will accept this. Now, some states don't accept national registry. There are very few and far between now, but there are still some that are out there that will not accept it. Florida being an interesting state because they will accept your national. You can obtain your Florida license, but then in order to relicense, you can't just give them a new national card. You got to submit all your Con Ed through their site so they can approve you for the next to renew after 2 years. So it's different. Every state's a little bit different. Along with that, New Hampshire, for example, we teach you the AEMT. You pass all that. But there's also another class you guys are also taking built into this one here for New Hampshire, and that's what they call the scope of practice module. And that allows you to do different skills above and beyond the advanced EMT teachings for that basic level knowledge that you're going to obtain from this. And different medication administration. And then credentialing is the verification process of the healthcare provider's qualifications that may be local or regional process. So you may have a region that says, okay, you can only do this stuff here in region 1, but region 2, you can do this. Region 3, you can do that. Or it can be statewide protocol where it's all the same no matter where you go. And then they can add local option on top of that. So like for our area that we have, there's a statewide protocol that says that paramedics can carry heparin on an ambulance. Not every service carries it because it's a local option based on the medical director. So at Action Ambulance, we carry heparin to administer as a paramedic for STEMIs, patients having heart attacks, because it's a local option that allows us to bypass a hospital to bring them directly to a cath lab. So again, you have the state stuff, then you have local, and then you have your regional process. In most states, healthcare providers are categorized into 4 training and licensure levels. Right? What do you think those 4 levels are? This is where you guys have to participate. So feel free to unmute and let me know what you think.
So you got EMR, EMT Basic, Advanced, and Paramedic?
That's it. Perfect.
I'm going to agree with that.
What was that?
I'm going to agree with that.
So with that, with EMR, their first medically trained professional to arrive on scene. These would be more of your fire department first response. Provides initial care before the ambulance arrives and assists with more advanced responders. EMRs cannot be the provider in the back of an ambulance transporting alone. They have to have an EMT or higher. The EMT is trained in BLS, including the use of AEDs, airway adjuncts, and assists administering certain medications. Now remember, this is the national standard, okay? Yes, I understand. EMTs in New Hampshire, you can do King Airways and iGels, and there's a bunch of other stuff that you can use for different airway management and meds, and I get it, CPAP. But that's not at the national level. So I'm going to teach you guys 2 different things within this program. One, you have to know what the national level is going to expect and what you're going to have to know to pass your test. Then there's what New Hampshire does, okay, which is above and beyond that. So you're going to learn 2 different things, the street way we do things and what the state allows and what you need to know to pass your exam. The advanced EMT, which is advanced training in specific aspects of advanced life support, ALS, like intravenous access, intravenous therapy, IV, administering of certain emergency medications and certain types of advanced airway management. AEMTs in Maine cannot give epinephrine 1 to 10,000 for cardiac arrest. It's not within the scope of practice. But in New Hampshire, they can. Okay. Now, in Maine, I'm going to bring Maine stuff up because I am still a Maine paramedic. I have been for quite some time. At the AEMT level in Maine, they have the ability to give IV Tylenol. In New Hampshire, it's not even a paramedic drug. least not yet. It's going to be changing on the next protocol rollout. So again, every state has something a little bit different, and IV Tylenol is not a national scope medication for the advanced level. Does that make sense? You guys understand that?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay. So I don't want to confuse anybody, but there's state and local option, and then there's national standard. The paramedic is trained in ALS, endotracheal intubation, emergency pharmacology, cardiac monitoring, and other advanced assessment and emergency medical treatment skills. Okay. You're also going to be trained in emergency pharmacology because that is part of your skill level. So we're going to go in depth on pharmacology and make sure you guys understand the medications you're giving and why you give it and what the effects in the body it does, right? Because the protocol says to do something, you might want to understand what medications you're going to be giving. And I'll give one example as we go through this, is you give someone an albuterol treatment, you expect their heart rate to go up because it's a sympathomimetic that mimics the sympathetic nervous system, increasing heart rate. Got it. Some of you are probably like, what the heck did he just say? We will cover that more in detail later. But having an understanding of a medication and the side effects of what it will do will help you understand what's going on with your patients. And that is where I want to train you guys to be. I don't want you guys to be cookbook. I want you guys to be clinicians. Clinicians, you think, you treat. Cookbook EMS providers, read a protocol book and say, we're going to follow this, 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 and this because it tells me to, not because I understand what's going on. Does that make sense? I want you guys to be clinicians and have an understanding of why you're doing stuff. There's a cause and effect to everything that we do. You need to understand those causes and effects of what's happening. EMRs are first medically trained professionals, which we already covered. EMT is obviously trained in BLS, use of AEDs, airway adjuncts, and then they can assist or administer certain medications. AEMTs have the same level of training as EMTs, and then they have some ALS aspects above it. And then obviously the paramedics have endotracheal intubation, moving forward the cardiac monitoring. Now, as an AEMT in New Hampshire and Maine, you can do cardiac monitoring. You can even interpret 6 different rhythms, but it's not a national standard. It's one of those things they utilize for local option or state option, I should say. So training and licensure require, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, but we can cardiac monitor, but we can't interpret and patch that into a hospital, correct?
You can, as long as it's 6 rhythms that you can interpret. So you can do sinus Brady, sinus tach, VTach, VFib, and asystole. Now, if the patient's an AFib, SVT, they have a first, second, or third degree block, you cannot say that. However, what you can do, and this is the same thing for Maine as well, because I know we have some Maine providers here, right? If you do a 12 lead, you cannot interpret a 12 lead. You can't say, yep, I looked at the 12 lead and it's showing a sinus rhythm with inferior infarct. Okay, you cannot interpret that. But what you can say, computer interpretation says this. That you're allowed to do. So if you see a atrial fibrillation rhythm on a 12 lead, because 12 lead is within your scope as an AEMT in both states that we're doing the stuff for the classroom stuff here, okay, you can put down computer interpretation says atrial fibrillation. You are not violating protocol because you're putting down what the cardiac monitor tells you what it is. Does that make sense, George?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. So it's no different than an EMT doing a 12 lead. Computer interpretation states this, and it's perfectly fine to put in your narrative as long as you document computer interpretation and not it says this, because then it shows that you did it versus the computer. So the textbook covers the 2021 National EMS Education Standards and the 2019 National EMS Scope of Practice module. And the NHTSA is a federal administration source for education standards and related documents. So the NHTSA is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and EMS Education Standards. So AEMT is training and focus requirements. So AEMTs will provide emergency care to the sick and injured. Some patients will have life-threatening conditions, and some require only supportive care. And you guys have seen this already. You've been through it. You've been EMS providers for 2 months to 20 years, right? You guys have had that background and that experience. This is what makes this class so much more special, because we're not training someone that's brand new. So we can actually have, I'm not big on ton of war stories, but we can have conversations about specific calls in a training environment as long as HIPAA is met, right? And we can talk about that once we get more into our stuff. You can say, hey, I had this pretty interesting call, we can discuss it in a training format. So with that, some of the subjects discussed include scene size up. So gain a big picture perspective of the call and determine if it is safe to proceed. We're going to determine whether additional resources are needed and identify the initial approach to mitigate the emergency scene. We're also going to, EMS will also operate in a wide variety of environments that can be dangerous EMS personnel. An EMS provider must also ensure personal safety. So you got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and looking around. Scene size up never stops. It's taught like that in the fire service. It's taught like that in EMS. Scene size up starts by the time you hear the initial dispatch, because you get the dispatch information as you go in. You listen to what they have to say. As you approach the scene, you're looking. You're seeing what kind of residence it looks like. Are there steps? Are there no steps? Patient inside, outside. These are all things that should be going through your head, and size up continuously goes through. As you walk in to the house, you want to look at the condition of how they're living. Okay, are there any weapons that someone could grab and attack you with? If there are, can we secure them and move them to a different place, different location, where they can no longer reach them? Do we need to back out and call law enforcement, right? Always have scene size up as we go through, right? Patient assessment is the foundation of any EMS call. And I expect you guys to do head-to-toe assessments. Asking the appropriate questions, pertinent negatives, sample, OPQRST, right? Looking at all these different things that are out there, all these different acronyms that we covered. And for some of you, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe we're talking about BLS again. But BLS has to happen before ALS happens, okay? You have to have your BLS assessment done. It's also the purpose to determine what is wrong with the patient and which complaints are life-threatening, right? We are, no joke, are doing differential diagnosis. That's what we do. We look at all the differentials that are out there. We rule things out with specific testing and questioning. And we come up with a diagnosis of a patient within 3 minutes of patient contact and how we're going to treat them. That is how we do things, all right? So for people to say, oh, you don't diagnose, then how are we treating? You can't treat someone without a diagnosis. You have a symptom, you treat the symptoms that are there because you have a diagnosis in your head of what's really wrong with the patient. That's what we do. Right? That's why it's so important to understand patient assessment. And we are going to hit patient assessment hard, especially on practical days. EMT class was a different world. You guys are going to learn patient assessment. This is going to be this is advanced care. This is advanced life support. All right? You're going to be taking that next step in pathophysiology, AEMT, and understanding how things work. All right? Treatment, as far as ensuring the patient is oxygenated, administering certain medications and IV therapies if needed. We're also going to cover lab draws because that is part of your scope of practice. And if you're working for us out here, we're doing clinical time, the hospitals expect labs to be drawn. So we got to cover that as well. Controlling bleeding, assessing patients during childbirth, managing patients in emotional crisis, looking at packaging, preparing the patient for movement as a unit by means of a backboard or similar stabilization devices to medical care facilities. Do we need stair chairs? Are we putting them on stretchers and are we walking patients, right? What is going on? What are we doing? We have to be able to make that determination. Moving up to that advanced level takes you to that next step. So now you're going to be working with EMTs on a truck, and you're going to be the highest license level on that call. And instead of being the EMT going, hey, paramedic or AEMT, what do we do next? Now you're the one making that decision. You're taking that next step. EMS as a career, taking care of yourself. You got to find ways to successfully cope with the job stresses. And let me tell you, there are a lot of job stressors that are there. I hear Tyler laughing in the background over there. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. Kid calls, bad motor vehicle accidents, and things like that. You got to have a way to relieve that stress, and you have to talk, right? The old days of being, they thought you were a pansy because you didn't talk, because you talked about calls. Those days are gone, right? You need to express yourself. You have to talk, and you got to be able to have that release. Okay. You must meet certain requirements that differ from state to state. So general requirements to be licensed and employed as an AEMT, general requirements, okay, this is national standard, high school diploma or equivalent, proof of immunizations against certain communicable diseases, a valid driver's license. These are just some things that you might have to have. AEMT requirements also upon successful completion of a background check, drug screening, you have to have CPR, a state recognized AEMT course, which is what we're doing today, state recognized written certification exam, which is your national registry, and the same thing with a practical examination as a national registry. Demonstrate the ability to meet psychological and physical criteria to perform the job. Compliance with other state and local and employer provisions, right? You got to know your state and local protocols. And now for New Hampshire, it's statewide protocol, which is perfectly fine. Vermont was district for a very long time. And now they finally went statewide protocol, which makes life a little bit easier. You go down south into the Carolinas and it's districts of what they allow you to do. They accept it. But actually one of the biggest ones to actually be familiar with is like Massachusetts, where if you go out to Western Mass, advanced EMTs are highly more used. Eastern Mass, you don't see many at all. So again, it depends on where you are, what you're doing, and understand the protocols that you have at your disposal. A state recognized written and practical exam may be the NREMT exam, and that's exactly what that is. And most states recognize NREMT certification. You just got to make sure you know which ones accept it. And like Massachusetts, I'm bringing that up. 2015 is when they finally went national. Maine has been national registry since like 2001, and New Hampshire has been national for a long time. The American with Disabilities Act of 1990 protects people who have a disability from being denied access to programs and services provided by state and or local governments. It also prohibits the employers from failing to provide full and equal employment to people with disabilities. So Title I of the ADA protects, excuse me, those with disabilities seeking gainful employment under many circumstances. Employers with 15 or more employees are required to adjust processes so a candidate with a disability can be considered for the position and, when possible, to modify the work environment or how the job is normally performed. This is a federal requirement. All right. Any questions at this point? Looking good? No questions? I love it. All right, let's keep moving. All right, so kind of an overview of the EMS system and history with that as well. So origins of EMS include, this is kind of some of the things behind it all, are field treatments and transport innovated during the Civil War. Where do you think a lot of our protocols came from? Yeah, I see Kenny saying war, Army.
Trial and error.
Trial and error, right? And this is combat from Kobe, perfect, right? Those are all correct answers, right? A lot of stuff was derived by mostly the military. You know, it's kind of like the ICS system. Where did a lot of that come from? Wildland firefighting, right? Well, ours came from the military. We're a paramilitary organization, EMS, right? So they do a lot of trial stuff in the military and they bring it back to us. But a lot of stuff now that we're doing, and because of the what they call a Pegasus study, which was one of the studies they did in Texas, is why our pediatric protocols are the way they are right now. Okay, so Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, all the New England states have a very, very close pediatric protocol set because they did a massive study in Texas called the Pegasus study, which they found that evidence-based medicine actually works. Imagine that, right? And that's where a lot of our new protocols now are being derived from, are evidence-based medicine, which is a great thing for us to have. Now, and then people are going to hate me when I say this because we've all done run reports, right? So using image trends, so we'll say MEFRS for Maine, Tempsys, for the action employees, PCR, easy PCR to, I'm having a Berlin, oh my God, I'm having a TraumaSoft. Looking at all these different programs out, the Zoll program, what is the one thing people hate the most? Drop-down boxes, right? Why do we need to fill all those in? Oh, it drives me up the wall, right? That's your evidence-based medicine. It's tracking everything to give us better protocols, and that's why it's there, right? As much as I hate drop-down boxes, I also want to see us do better with our protocol sets moving forward, and they can't do studies without it, right? So it all derives from that. I know this is not history, but it's kind of moving into what our future is going to look like. So field treatments and transport innovated during the Civil War, right? What was one of the mobile hospitals called? What were those called? They made a TV series about it. Yep, let's see, Tundra, Bob, MASH, right? That stuff actually happens. This is where the field treatment started, right? Volunteer ambulances in World War I, specially trained field care providers in World War II. Advances in trauma care resulted from casualty experiences in the Korean and Vietnam conflicts. Conflicts in the Middle East in response to terrorism continue to influence EMS practices today, right? So where were some of our first first programs started, right? In the United States, as late as the early 1970s, and yes, there are still some providers today that work for Action Ambulance that probably got their EMT license then. Emergency ambulance services and cared varied widely. EMS, as we know it today, originated in 1966. Numbers you guys won't want to be familiar with your testing, by the way. With the publication of the Accidental Death and Disability and the Neglected Disease of Modern Society. So 1966, EMS started evolving, right? As late as the early 1970s, now we started seeing more ambulance services starting to come about at this point, okay? The DOT then developed a national standard in the late 1970s for a curriculum for paramedics, identified a part of the course to serve as training for advanced EMTs. Back in the day, they were called intermediate, that middle level, right? So during the 1980s, areas of the national standard curriculum then were enhanced, right? So we started seeing paramedics come about in the late 1970s. And where do you think some of the first paramedics started? What states? What areas? What departments?
California.
Right? I see California. I see Matt O'Connor putting California down. Some of your first paramedics, believe it or not, were Cape Cod, Massachusetts. In the mid 1970s, Cape Cod, Massachusetts physicians at Cape Cod Hospital, your dad, yep, pretty much. So developed a paramedic program that the physicians taught. And that's where your paramedic instructors were. They were doctors, right? Miami-Dade Fire Rescue had some of the first paramedics in the country. And then, yes, going to California. What's another TV series that sparked EMS?
Emergency.
Emergency, right? Squad 51, right?
Squad 51.
Yeah, they were transmitting EKGs in the 1970s, 1980s. Imagine that, we're doing that today. Some of our cardiac monitors are a lot smaller now and weigh a lot less, right? Technology has changed, but it's advanced. But these shows sparked this movement. You go to the fire service and you can go back and relate fire back to the caveman era, okay? You can go back that far, and fire progressed throughout that time. We can talk fire history all day, but EMS history doesn't go back that far, or does it? Right? In the United States, that's when we started seeing stuff in the 60s and 70s, starting seeing more organized programs. But they've been around since Civil War, World War I, II, right? Way before 1970, way before 1966. So these are things we got to pay attention to. In the 1980s, areas of the national standard curriculum were then enhanced. So we started saying, you know what, we need to do more than just toss a body in the back of a hearse, transport it to a hospital and or a morgue and see what happens. Now we started seeing changes. EMTs and AEMTs now can perform advanced skills in the field. Believe it or not, EMTs and advanced EMTs were doing intubations a long time ago, right? Maine took away intubations from the intermediate in 2010. That's how long they had them for. When I got my intermediate, we were doing intubations in 06 in Maine. In 1990, the NHTSA developed the EMS agenda for the future, and boy, did that take off. In 2019, they published the EMS agenda for 2050. This is where they would like to see us go. So we talk about levels of training. Obviously, licensure is a state function because there's a medical director that oversees all of that. Then they can pass it down to local medical directors and service medical directors as well, right? So with this variation in practice, training, and licensure requirements, there's also federal law, which the National EMS Scope of Practice module provides guidelines for the minimum skills each level EMS provider should be able to perform. So just because that's the minimum level, each state can then take that level, and because they have the authority having jurisdiction, can go one step up. And that's where the state level laws regulate how EMS providers will operate. So there's a federal level training, or what we have to train you to, and that's the class you're in today. And then we take that and we enhance it with what they call a scope of practice module that allows you to provide more care, right? The local level is a medical director decides day-to-day limits of EMS personnel. Examples would include the medications that can be carried on an ambulance or where patients are transported. The medical director can also limit the scope of practice, but cannot expand above state law, okay? So if you're working, let's say in Ossipee, and you call medical direction as an A, and they say, no, go ahead, you can give 100 mics of fentanyl. Just because they told you to do it, state law does not allow you to do that, okay? All right, so you have to advise the medical director, you're not at that license, it's not within your scope of practice, right? Because the local level medical directors don't know the state, don't really know the state protocol. Does that make sense? Everybody? Yeah, perfect. All right. So public basic life support, BLS, and immediate aid. There are millions of lay people that are trained in BLS CPR, and CPR is getting better and better every time. They're actually doing a lot more public education stuff as we're seeing now. We're seeing it advertised in radios. AMR was really big on the CPR push for a long time. I remember back when I was a supervisor in the Seacoast, and Sean was there during all that time with me. We would have National CPR Day, and we would have different posts set up, and we'd see how many people we could train in that time frame. You know, so we had that, and there was a big push, and the AHA started putting stuff on the radios, training people how to do hands-only CPR. BLS courses are designed so lay people can provide critical care before AEMTs or other responders arrive. It includes training of teachers, coaches, babysitters. American Red Cross actually has a babysitter class. The AHA can't call it that, so they call it pediatric first aid. Right? So there's a lot of different ones that are out there, but things are starting to move forward. AEDs detect treatable life-threatening cardiac arrhythmias and deliver appropriate electrical shocks. They're designed to be used by an untrained layperson, which include at every level of pre-hospital emergency training. From EMR to paramedic, you're trained to use an AED as part of BLS CPR training. EMRs include law enforcement, firefighters, park rangers, ski patrollers. Now, I say ski patrollers. Are there any in the class that are ski patrol at all? And you guys do it?
I think Rosa does.
Right? What is it? What standard do you guys follow, Rosa, for a ski patrol?
Yeah, we're just EMRs as ski patrol. There's a lot of stuff I can't do when I'm on the mountain that I can do in the back of an ambulance.
Right, but you guys follow another ski patrol standard, right?
Yes.
What is that called?
Uh,
I'm drawing a blank of what it's called. But you guys are still required to backboard patients, right?
yes.
Okay. So if Rosa being an EMT or an AEMT, we do not backboard patients. We only use them as extrication devices now, right? That's what we do in EMS. She has to actually use board, collar, head blocks, the whole deal, because the ski patrol follows a different standard on top of them being EMRs, working as an EMR. Did I say that right, Rosa?
Yes, you did.
Okay. So it's a different thing. So again, there's different standards. We do not have to follow their standard if we're responding on an ambulance and providing that type of care. So that's EMR. And that brings up legality stuff too. And something that maybe this will probably help Rosa out as well. Rosa's going to pass this class. She's going to pass her A because I have 2 thumbs up here and she's going to pass everything, right? She gets her AEMT and she goes to the mountain. Person goes into cardiac arrest. She's not going to get in trouble if she doesn't do an IV and push cardiac meds because where she works does not allow her to practice to that level. Therefore, she does not have a duty to act at the advanced EMT level. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Moving forward. All right.
Yep.
So EMR training provides skills necessary to initiate immediate care and assist other EMS providers upon their arrival. They can also drive an ambulance, which also helps. Their focus is on providing immediate BLS care and urgent care with limited equipment. They don't have much to utilize. They also familiarize students with additional procedures, equipment, and packaging techniques other EMS providers may use, with which an EMR may be called upon to assist. So at the EMR level, you cannot, in New Hampshire, put on a traction splint. It's not allowed. You have to be an EMT or higher. EMT courses require about 150 hours or so. Provides the essential knowledge and skill to provide basic emergency care, serves as the foundation of which additional knowledge and skills are built in AEMT training. So we take what you learned in EMT school, we build on that to make you a stronger clinician. That's how we work. On arrival at the scene, AEMTs and other providers who have responded with the ambulance should assume responsibility of the assessment, care, and packaging and transport, if appropriate, of the patient to the emergency department. If you show up as an A, you now assume patient care. You are the highest license level. You can triage it down, but you have to do an ALS assessment in order to triage down. And that's not something you hear in private EMS. You have to triage your patients down to BLS. If not, you're abandoning your patient. AEMT training provides knowledge and skill of specific ALS parts. AEMT course is a minimum of 200 hours. This course is 350 hours. Okay, that's how long this course is going to last, between clinical rotations and didactic knowledge. All right, with the paramedic level, extensive course training, 800 to 1,100 hours beyond the EMT requirements. It may be offered within context of an associate or bachelor's degree program, and there's a wide range of ALS skills. My program was 5 semesters long, and I had 1,000 hours of clinical rotations all over, from New York up. I had to go to Yonkers for a while, a bunch of other things too. So again, it's a wide variety if you guys decide to move up in your license levels. All right, so components of the EMS system. Obviously, the EMS Agenda 2050 is a multidisciplinary national review of all aspects of EMS delivery. So the goal is to develop a more cohesive and consistent system across the US. They really wanted to push, I don't say this part here, but New England-based protocols. Instead of going state to state, it'd be a New England-based, everything's the same. The problem is every state does something a little bit different, and they're trying to all get on the same page. It's been going on for many, many years. Probably 15 years now they've been meeting and trying to get all this to work to the appropriate level. I don't foresee that happening anytime in the very near future. It also provides a comprehensive, quality, convenient care, evidence-based clinical care, efficient, well-rounded care, preventative care, and comprehensive and easily accessible patient records going to one system. We're already getting that point with TEMSIS and MEFRS and PCR and all that, because now it's a comprehensive system where we can access patient records. But then tying that in with the hospital systems, like Epic, as like one that Maine Health uses. Preventative care, that's us doing seminars and looking at like what was a big thing for a while and still is heart safe community preventative care. Now moving into community paramedics and community paramedicine, where we have EMTs and above going out to homes doing follow-ups for the hospital to make sure that that care is being followed through. All this stuff is moving forward as part of the 2050 EMS agenda. All right. They're looking for a people-centered system as well, so safe and efficient transport. As you can see, a lot of ambulances have changed inside and how patients are going to be loaded in, how stretchers will be secured, and things like that. Care that reduces physical and emotional and psychological suffering, not just on the patient, but also on us. And you're starting to see more mandates. In New Hampshire, just mandated. Tyler, maybe you can help me with this. It just came out. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. You have to unmute. I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's for health and safety for PTSD. I'm just drawing a blank right now. But New Hampshire just released that as a statewide requirement that every provider has to go through it now once a year. It's kind of like Maine doing the mandated reporting. They felt that was very important, so now Maine providers have to get on Maine EMS and do the mandated reporter training now. It's mental health. Thank you. Oh my goodness, I knew I'd figure out eventually here. Mental health training is actually a required training now for New Hampshire EMS to do on a yearly basis. Inherently safe and effective, integrated and seamless. So what they're looking for, inherently safe and effective, so the entire system from start to finish is designed to minimize exposure to injury, infections, illness, or stress. The integrated and seamless is where EMS is then fully integrated with all other aspects of healthcare and is also engaged with other emergency services and within the communities in which they operate. Are they reliable and prepared, ensuring that EMS care is delivered consistently and compassionately and is guided by sound research at all times by all EMS providers at all levels or from all agencies. Socially equitable. So that access and care and the quality of care are not determined by the patient's age, socioeconomic status, gender, ethnicity, or where they live. Everybody will get the same care no matter what. Sustainable and efficient, meaning systems must be fiscally responsible, providing value to the community with a minimum of waste and a maximum of accountability of what we do. And then adaptable and innovative, which is evolving to meet the changing needs of the people whom they serve by continuously evaluating new tools and techniques, education programs, and system designs. So posting of trucks, location of trucks. One of the big ones is paramedic fly cars and taking paramedics off the ambulance so they can have ALS care provided at a faster pace in the systems. There's a lot of different things that this 2050 agenda has in place. Public access, so easy access to help emergency is essential. In most of the United States, the Emergency Communication Center that dispatches fire, police, rescue, EMS units can be reached by dialing 911. In most of it. Some of them still have 7-digit numbers. Trained dispatchers obtain information and dispatch the ambulance crew and other equipment or responders or in responders. And communication centers is usually the public safety access point. Tyler, do you want to go in detail a little more on that with dispatch?
Sure. So does anyone actually know how the 911 calls get routed? And it does vary based state on state. Good job, Bob. EMD. So in New Hampshire, EMD is done by the state. So they will take and ask the provider, the caller, a bunch of specifically predetermined questions, and that'll determine what your call is for. So has anyone heard of the alpha through echo? All those called determinants is what they call them.
Yes, sir.
The call determinants, that's how we based on the levels. So an alpha level call is, according to those questions, a lower acuity call versus an echo level call. And that'll base on our different determinants to give us the appropriate call resources. And a lot of different areas use the call determinants to base off of what they're going to send to that. So for example, a alpha call doesn't necessarily need a paramedic. So they're going to maybe they'll send a basic or an advanced truck to handle that call. Whereas if you get an echo level call, you're going to send 2 medic level ambulances, a basic staff fire truck, and when they dispatch everything, the determinants allow us to appropriately utilize the resources available to us and to not overtax the system that you're in.
What was that? Yeah, I'm just filling up the water bottle while you were talking.
So the EMD for the fire service in Maine is actually a newer thing, but it's the exact same thing.
And if you're working in the Sanford area, then they're not doing what they call EFT, which is emergency fire dispatch. And they're actually doing determinants now for fire calls. So I always thought it was interesting. All right. So that was a little more in detail because Tyler is certified EMD, which I am not. So if you're going to have him talk about the enhanced systems that are out there, which we just covered on here. So as far as contracted systems go, for communication systems, dispatch selects parts of emergency system to activate, like EMS may be part of a fire or police department. So if you look at this, the city of Billerica, Mass, Billerica PD runs the ambulance. So there are still some police-based ambulance services that are out there that are actually contracted through towns. Whether it be private, state, or become private service like Action Ambulance and other ones that are out there. Municipality services provided by hospital-based programs like Frisbee EMS, New London Hospital. They have hospital-based ambulance. For Maine, like Pace Ambulance Service out of Norway through Stevens Memorial. So there are a lot of different services that are hospital-based. There's private, there's municipality, there's police department, fire-based municipality, or just EMS-based municipality. They're all different ones that are out there, or federal government like Togus, for example. They have ambulances up there as well in Maine. So it could be a federal ambulance, the shipyard, Pease Air Force Base or Pease Air Force Base, things like that. As far as clinical care goes, you'll use a wide range of emergency equipment. AEMT course will help you learn this type of equipment that's out there. You're going to be using IVs. You're going to be using cardiac monitors, mechanical CPR devices if your service has them. So there's a lot of different varieties of equipment. CPAP being another one. Yes, I know it's at the EMT level, but the EMT level for CPAP is still fairly new. New Hampshire and Maine and Massachusetts is a local option. They all have it now at the EMT level. Checking equipment before going on duty to ensure that it's in the assigned place, it's working properly, that you are familiar with the specific model that's currently there. Know your equipment, know what you're utilizing, and how to use the equipment that's present in front of you. The last thing you want is to show up to a call and say, I don't know how to use this. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Before you go on duty, you want to make sure you check your equipment and supplies, communication equipment, vehicle, make sure your vehicle is ready to go, driver's controls, and built-in units and controls in the patient compartment. Make sure things are working appropriately. Human resources deals with people within the EMS system. Overreaching or the overarching concept is to encourage the creation of EMS systems that provide an environment where talented people want to work and can turn their passion into a rewarding career. With that, the EMS Agenda 2050 encourages systems to help protect the well-being of the EMS provider, develop career ladders, allowing talented EMS providers ways to use their talent for many years, and efforts as well. Go back over here. Efforts are being made to ensure that EMS providers can relocate from one state to another more seamlessly. Who in the class wants to move forward after A and go to paramedic? Kenny, Matt, Bob is hell no. George wants to move up. Kobe eventually. Jen. So that's awesome. It's a great move. But paramedic opens up many other doors as well. So understand. Yes. So people want to move up to that level. And there's a lot of opportunities, whether you want to go into, nice, Bob, nice, into flight medicine, critical care, ground transport, hospital-based, municipality, fire department. There's so many different avenues you can take moving up in license level. But again, you need to master what you're currently at. But what this helps, though, is this model is to create a stable foundation which each level of EMS provider is grounded and move your way up. And it's our job to facilitate that, to make sure that you can move from state to state and or obtain the education to move forward within your career and where you want to go. Medical direction and control. This is very important, and we really push medical direction, especially for our New Hampshire operations where I work. Medical direction and control are there for you, and they're there to save you. So each system has a physician medical director who authorizes providers to give medical care in the field. I'm not here to promote Action Ambulance, Berlin EMS, places that I work. I'm here to talk about medical control and direction, teach you guys how to be AEMTs. Every service you work for has a medical director. Not the state, but the service itself, right? So keep that in mind. There's a medical director for each service. You should know who that person is, right? So I do per diem stuff in Shapley. I know that's Dr. Brown. I know that for Action Ambulance, I know that we have Dr. Dunn as our medical director for New Hampshire, but Dr. Canterbury runs the entire Massachusetts operation down there. You have to know who you work for and your medical directors, right? And that should be part of an orientation phase as well when you get hired, because you may be hearing from them. Then you have medical control, which is different than medical direction. Now, Massachusetts is different, okay? You contact your medical control hospital. In New Hampshire, you contact the hospital you're transporting to. Same thing with Maine. So if you're in let's say Shapley, for example, and you're transporting to Sanford Hospital, you call medical direction at Sanford. If we're working in Ospey Valley and we're going to Huggins Hospital, we call Huggins Hospital. If we're going to Memorial, we call Memorial. There's not one specific hospital that we contact. So know how your system works before you start being sent out to the wolves and working on your own. Standing orders are part of protocols and designate what an AEMT is required to do for a specific complaint or condition. Protocols are guidelines to help you. If you're going to deviate from your protocol, you have to have medical control direction to do so, okay? Or you're acting in the best interest of your patient. And I'm saying this, you're acting in the best interest of your patient if you cannot contact medical control, but never go outside your scope of practice. Does that make sense? Everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can deviate from your protocol in the best interest of your patient without going outside your scope. Once you go outside your scope, it's on you, right? All right. Perfect. Next. So medical directors working, which is a working liaison among the medical community, hospitals, and AEMTs. So we have online medical control and offline medical control. What is the difference? What is the difference between online and offline?
Online, your medical director or your medical control is telling you what to do. And then offline is what you can do in your protocol.
That's a standing order.
As a standing order, right?
Yep. Now, we also have other orders as well. Interfacility transport. Yep, the evil word, IFT, transfers, right? I get it, it's evil. You can have written orders as well, and those can be done through a medical control or the sending physician can document orders that you need to follow within your scope of practice throughout a transfer. That's what they call a written order.
So like if you're transporting a patient and they say you can give them ODT for nausea if needed. So like, PRN or whatever,
Yeah, so
Right.
that's within the scope of practice as an A,
Right.
right? It's standing order. On a
Right.
transfer, they can put it down on the order form saying you can give ODT Zofran
Right.
2 times during transport of 4 milligrams PO, right?
Right.
Just follow the order that's there. Oh, wrong button. There we go. So legislation regulations. So training and protocols follow state legislation, rules, regulations, and guidelines. That's our state protocols, RSA rules, things like that. Medical directors, EMS supervisors, and others develop protocols for service areas. So an EMS supervisor does not develop a protocol, but they can sit on committees to help develop new protocols, and or they can do what they call trials as well to kind of help develop new protocols. Daily operation and direction of a service are provided by an appointed chief or chief executive officer, officer in charge for the day, captains, whatever, as far as operational stuff in your own agency. If EMS is part of a police or fire department, an assistant chief manages EMS activities. Not always. Sometimes it can be a captain. Sometimes a lieutenant can oversee it. Sometimes it can be an EMS supervisor, depending on what their role and responsibilities are, whether they're clinical operations, like my case, both, and whatever else you utilize. Again, know what your system runs. Integration of health services. Pre-hospital care is coordinated with the care administered at the hospital. Some EMS systems have collaborated with local hospitals to improve patient outcomes associated with time-sensitive treatment, which include heart attacks, trauma, and stroke. Know what your systems can handle, and if you have to bypass to another system that can handle these specific situations, right? So when you deliver a patient to the ED, you are simply transferring the patient from another to another care provider. As an EMT to paramedic, you cannot turn over a patient to an LNA or a CNA. It has to be of equal license and or higher. So a nurse, a paramedic, a physician, an LPN, right? Those you can turn them over to, right? ED techs, you cannot turn them over to an ED tech because they are not a provider that can keep treating the patient. This helps decrease errors to increase efficiencies as well, and also, most of all, ensure the patient receives comprehensive continuity of care. And that's very important. Mobile integrated healthcare, this is more of your community paramedicine stuff, is a new system delivering healthcare that utilizes pre-hospital spectrum, which has evolved as a result of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Community paramedicine usually experienced paramedics receive advanced training to equip them to provide services within a community. Interesting why this came about. If a patient is discharged from a hospital and they get readmitted for that discharge diagnosis within 30 days, the hospital is required to pay the bill. Right? So community paramedicine actually came into effect with this because now they work in conjunction with the hospital doing telemedicine. They can go out to these homes to check on them to make sure they're doing the appropriate follow-up care. And if they have different procedures that have to happen, they can perform a more advanced care using telemedicine, using like FaceTime or something like that to be able to have a conversation with a physician in real time to be able to provide the care that's needed. It leads to better services for those who are also homebound or also disabled that can't leave. We go out there as community paramedics and we actually provide hospital care pre-hospitally, if that makes any sense. Evaluating quality and safety. So CQI, QA reviews and audits all aspects of an EMS call. Refresher training and continuing education is also important. I do all the CQI for the company that I work for, and it's not there to discipline. Well, it can be disciplined, but it's not there primarily for discipline. It's there to help educate to make them a better provider. And that's what CQI is supposed to be about, right? And I look at all the run reports that come through the company I work for. And the medical director maintains quality control. And they also see run reports as well. And a lot of times we can develop educational plans to help better everybody as a whole. Times when errors can occur are communicating with other AEMTs or transferring the patient to the ED. So another function of this to eliminate that is human error is improve patient safety. So driving to the scene can also be hazardous. Patients can be dropped during lifting and moving. So we got to find ways to reduce that. AEMTs must strive to eliminate errors as much as possible. Understanding the circumstances of the errors helps minimize them. So there are three main sources of errors. One is rule-based failure. Two is knowledge-based failure. And three is skill-based failure. And any combination of these can occur simultaneously. So agencies need to have clear-cut protocols and or guidelines, policies, protocols that are understood by all the AEMTs in the service. The environment can also contribute to errors, for example, like distractions or poor lighting. So you've got to make sure that you have the appropriate equipment and the appropriate lighting and whatnot to do the job. You walk into a home and you don't have flashlights on you and the home is dark and you're going in for an unresponsive, possible overdose, the last thing you want to do is kneel down on the floor and go into someone else's vomit, or even worse, a needle that was just recently used and it goes through your pants and sticks you in your kneecap. Now you have an exposure, right? Flashlights are key, lighting. Make sure you can see what you are doing. Then ask yourself, when you're about to perform a skill, ask yourself this: why am I doing this? Why am I putting this IV in? Why am I putting him on a cardiac monitor? Don't just do it because the protocol says to do it. Ask yourself why. Is this going to benefit the patient? And what I do, with what am I, my goodness, with what I am doing, will that benefit patient care? I'm giving this medication. Why am I giving this medication? Not because the protocol says, but why am I doing it? What is it going to do to the body? How long does the effect work? That's your pharmacokinetics, right? So you're finding out why we gave a med. Is it the right med? Is it the right patient? Is it the right dose? What's the mechanism of action, right? What are the pharmacokinetics behind it? How is it administered, right? If you do something wrong, a patient can die with this, right? We're giving medications that can actually kill people if given in the wrong administration. For example, epinephrine 1 to 1,000, if given IV, can kill somebody. Given IM, can save somebody's life, right? So you got to know why, the cause and effect. Why am I doing this to this patient? And are they going to benefit? Is it going to help diagnostically to help treat this patient by doing this procedure? Right? If you cannot come up with a solution, ask for help from your partner, medical control, or an EMS supervisor. Cheat sheets are awesome. I have different forms on my phone. Without my phone, sometimes I'd be lost. Right? I have a protocol book and I have critical care cheat sheets, especially when I'm doing more of the critical care transport stuff that we do. So again, utilize them. Take pictures of different ones. Use the downtime to refresh your skills. Use less often. Look at your protocols. Know them. Last thing you want is to bring up your protocol book when a patient's dying and say, sorry, I got to read this first before I treat you. Right? Read it on the way to the call. Prepare yourself. Use decision-making aids such as algorithms to reflect on what is done as an informal critique for future improvement. Advanced cardiac life support, ACLS, follows algorithms. That's what they use. And discuss the calls. If it's a troublesome call with your partner, or talk with a supervisor. Please do not talk about another call with somebody else not involved in management, because then therefore you are violating HIPAA. All right. As far as information systems go, documentation is very important. This information can be used for a variety of purposes. One, used to construct educational sessions for your department, data from the ambulance activity logs to justify hiring more personnel, examining the types of patients and their frequency can provide the foundation for the purchase of new equipment and or continuing education sessions. It's also done through the NEMSIS system that helps plan for better EMS needs. So all EMS departments needing a funding system that allows for continuing or provide patient care, right? Provide care. So the system finance with all this. We can't budget for something as administrators if we don't know what volume we're looking at. This is why documentation is so important. Another thing we got to look at as well is there are several types of EMS departments in the United States. There's paid, volunteer, and combination. There are not, in the New England area, there are not many truly volunteer services left. Everybody else has gone to combination, career with volunteers, or per diem staffing, or career full-time paid staffing. All right, so that's kind of what we're looking at now. And it does cost a lot of money to function. And nothing for nothing, I mean, to understand how reimbursement works, topic of discussion another day. Look what AMR just did in Los Angeles, and it's one of the big hot topics right now. Interfacility transports do not make money unless you're in Maine. Maine has a high reimbursement rate. But other than that, in the rest of the United States, there's no money in interfacility transports. And until the hospitals step up and start actually paying services to come in, on top of getting billing money from billing a patient through Medicare or whatnot, there has to be some kind of subsidization or subsidy coming in. And AMR said, you know something? We're no longer going to do interfacility transport in the entire city of Los Angeles. We're pulling out. Because we just lost $3.5 million in 1 year. Right? So you're starting to see a lot of these different changes. So now we're talking this one here. So financial resources are available for EMS departments through taxation, fees for service, paid subscription, donations, federal, local, and state grants, fundraisers. There are ways to get money, but the biggest one is subsidization, especially in the private setting. We don't make enough money just on standard billing. There has to be money coming from subsidization somewhere from taxation. That's the only way services are going to be able to work. And you can sell about anything to anybody as long as you break it down to the penny. How much money is it going to cost per household per year to get services that you're looking for? Break it down. Don't just walk into a town hall to your finance and say, "Oh, we need to have $800,000 for payroll." Okay, no, but this is what it's going to cost per household per year, $150. Oh, okay, well that's not so much money at all then. Break things down and things like that. That's my whole thing on system finance. In 2020, the CMS implemented emergency triage, treat, and transport, what's called the ET3. Implemented a pilot program in a small group of EMS agencies known as the Emergency Triage and ET3 program, which allows transport to EDs or patients who will need that level of care. Sets up a payment model for the patient's transport to alternative destinations, such as an urgent care center, doctor's offices, or on-scene treatment with no transport. We're not doing that. We do not transport patients to urgent cares. We do not transport patients to doctor's offices in a 911 setting. That's done through interfacility. And even urgent cares, they don't do that either. But doctor's office visits and things like that, they're done through interfacility at BLS or Chakra. As far as the education system goes, instructors for the AEMT courses are approved and licensed by the state. So I had to go through a series of different training and educational stuff to be able to teach. Most EMS training programs adhere to the national standards, which is what we are doing, the Committee of Accreditation Educational Programs for the EMS professional. Okay, that's what we have to follow. So me as an instructor, yes, I own my own business, but my license falls under the state of New Hampshire, which has the Committee of Accreditation and Educational Programs. So I can't say, okay, this AEMT class is approved by me. I have to submit stuff to the state. They have to review my lessons, and they say yes or no, we can run this program. Then I'm like, all right, perfect. I get my CREP number. I can advertise, and now we're teaching classes. ALS level instructors are directed, and directors must hold a 4-year degree. This is more of the education system as a standard. Training is held at college, universities, career centers, and or hospitals. So for your paramedic level stuff, you have to have an equivalency of a 4-year degree to be able to teach these programs. In most states, educational programs that provide ALS training must be approved by the state and have their own medical director. So I have Dr. Scott Orr, he's my medical director. With that, I had to get approved by the state. And they also have a certain number of continuing education hours approved by AEMTs must be completed each year to maintain, update, or expand knowledge and skill. We follow the National Registry, so you're required to have continuing education hours every 2 years. All right, getting close to the end of this chapter. Public health examines the health needs for the entire population with a goal of preventing health problems. Heart Safe Community was huge on that because they wanted us to get out into the public to provide different seminars and CPR classes and diabetes awareness and health awareness programs, right? This is helping us. Vaccination programs have been huge. It wasn't that big when we just did flu stuff, but with COVID, it was a big part of that, including vaccination programs, helmets, seatbelt laws, tobacco use laws, prenatal screenings, and the formation of the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. EMS works with public health agencies on 2 strategies, right? One is primary prevention, which focuses on strategies that will prevent the event from ever happening, like vaccinations are an example. The second one being a secondary prevention, which occurs after the event has already happened. The question then is, how can we decrease the effects of the event? COVID, look at that as COVID coming out. COVID-19 first released A lot of stuff went through the FDA to get approvals. All of a sudden, vaccinations, yep, here we are, let's try them, let's put them to use. And the vaccination clinics popped out everywhere. Helmets and seatbelts are also examples as well. As far as EMS research goes, traditionally the medical practice is based on medical knowledge, intuition, and judgment. In the early years, many standards relating to professionalism, protocols, training, and equipment were developed from EMS providers' direct experience. Now, ongoing EMS research provides a scientific basis for standards. Studies are done. Because of evidence-based medicine, we're seeing better protocols now. It's been working in the military, it works in the hospitals, let's bring a free hospital. CPAP was a paramedic level skill when it first came out. And it worked its way down to the advanced level. Now they're realizing it does save lives, right? It prevents patients from being intubated most of the time, right? Because of that, now it's at the EMT level because it's a non-invasive skill that can't hurt somebody if followed and utilized appropriately, right? So that's why this evidence-based medicine has helped out. Narcan was always a paramedic drug for the longest time. Now it's being given by law enforcement officers intranasal. You know, so it's moved its way down because we saw an issue, a trend. We saw more overdoses happening, became a problem, and we had to find more people. Paramedics are not readily available, so we got to bring it down to the next level, then down to the next level, and now it's everybody. And Maine has done huge strides with this, as far as the Narcan, Leave Behind Narcan program. And now I just saw a recent article about them doing Suboxone treatments and leaving Suboxone with patients now. Maine EMS is looking at this. It's crazy what's happened, but it's for the benefit. Transport to specialty centers. You can bypass a hospital with medical control to go to the most appropriate facility that the patient needs. I can't speak for every area, but know the area you work in and know what hospitals can take. There's different levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, trauma centers, and then you have your critical access hospitals. So Memorial and Huggins Hospital are considered critical access. Portsmouth Hospital is a level 2 trauma center. The difference between level 2 and level 1, right? You have to have 24-hour neurosurgeons on staff in the hospital ready to go, and which Portsmouth Hospital does have. What they don't have is a teaching affiliation with a major university. Maine Med has that. Maine Med is a level 1 trauma center. Dartmouth has their own level 1 trauma center. Right? So that's how they obtain level 1. Helipads, neuro, teaching hospital. There's other ones behind it too. Interfacility transports, maybe between hospital and skilled nursing facilities and home residences. AMTs are responsible for health and wellness and the well-being of the patient during these transports. BLS to paramedic, you still have to do an assessment. You still have to do vital signs. It doesn't matter if you're going to a nursing home 2 minutes down the road. Still have to do a full patient assessment. All right. Be familiar with the hospital by observing equipment and how it's used. Again, in Maine, in the interfacility world, EMTs can take IV pumps on transfers, as long as it's running like saline or ringers or D5. In New Hampshire, EMTs cannot touch IV pumps at all during a transfer. But you'll learn that once you get hired somewhere if they do interfacility transport. All right, almost done here. So some public safety workers have EMS training as well. So become familiar with their roles and responsibilities, kind of know what they do, what's going on. These are some roles and responsibilities of the AEMT, and honestly, I can't even read that on my screen. It's so small. But I'll leave this up here for a second so you guys can see it. All right, moving forward here. Professional attributes of an EMT or AEMT. And then right here, every patient is entitled to compassion, respect, and the best care. Remember, whether paid or volunteer, you are still a healthcare professional. Doesn't matter who you are. All right. Any questions at all with that? How are we doing? Perfect. Let's take 10 minutes. So it's 8:40. So we'll come back at 8:51. We'll finish up chapter 2. We'll be done by 10 o'clock and get out of here.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So we have a 65 slide lecture to go through for about maybe an hour, and we should be done. So it's workforce safety and wellness. Again, nothing really different than from the EMT level as we go through this here. All right, so let's get into the introduction. So to take care of others, we must take care of ourselves. And this is something that's been, really pushing more and more on us, is that we always take care of other people, but who looks out for us? And which is why the mental health thing for New Hampshire came about. Now that every provider has to take. So AEMT training includes recognition of hazards, like personal neglect, health and safety hazards, stress, looking at self-control necessary to respond effectively to suffering of others, developed through training, experience, and dedication of the job that we do. Infectious disease, as well as a medical condition caused by the growth and spread of an organism within the body. And a communicable disease is a disease that can be spread from person to person or species to another. So why don't you guys give me a couple examples of a communicable disease other than COVID?
The flu.
The flu, what else? Give me some other ones.
STDs.
Sure, STDs.
Okay.
Chickenpox. I like that one. Monkeypox.
Monkeypox. No, thank you.
Monkeypox, chickenpox, bubonic plague. What else? TB. Yeah, that's one we need to pay attention to. And one of the things that we don't really talk about much anymore, but we used to have hand, foot, mouth disease. Yep. So what are some other prevention strategies we can utilize to prevent this from happening?
Wash your hands.
Yeah. Wash
Cover your mouth when you cough.
George Tramer said BSI. Exactly.
BSI.
Well, flat out ask, who's sick and tired of wearing masks?
This guy. Oh,
Right? But is it necessary to wear them?
nope. We did them back in the day when we're still alive.
We are.
Unfortunately, right now, I believe it might be in some certain circumstances.
Okay. Depending on what you might come in contact with. 23 years I have in the field, okay, working EMS and fire. I never wore a mask in the back of the ambulance unless you had a potential for an airborne exposure or TB. We never thought about anything else like flu, well, whatever. We were in the back, no mask. Patient had a fever of 104. No one cared, right? That's what we did. We did this, no gowns. We didn't put a gown on us. We were delivering a baby, So we never saw this kind of stuff. We didn't wear these types of protective, other than gloves. We didn't put masks on. So when COVID came out, what did we all do? Oh my God, massive pandemic, SCBAs. Yep. I had to wear those in the back of a truck before. We have a massive pandemic, and all of a sudden everybody has to wear a mask. Right? Population control, love it. Right? So what happened when we started putting masks on? Were people getting sick then? No, people were not getting sick wearing the masks. It was interesting. right? I worked in the emergency department. We saw this stuff coming in. People were not getting sick, right? They're coming in with COVID, and guess what was non-existent? What was non-existent during the first winter season of COVID?
Like flu,
The
right?
flu. The
Yeah.
flu was non-existent. No one had it. Nobody had the flu. No one even got no one even got vaccinated for the flu at all.
Yeah, but then wasn't that because they thought that as soon as you had the flu, it was COVID?
Well, no, we tested for it. That's the thing. People came in with COVID, and we do what they call a fourplex test, which was flu A, flu B, COVID, and RSV. Okay, we did a fourplex test on every patient. If you had any kind of symptom, your brain got tickled with a long. My goodness, I'm getting tired now. Basically going in, we scrubbed the nose, tickled the brain, pulled it out, sent it to the lab, and it came back flu negative every single time.
Everybody
Nobody,
had COVID. Nobody had the flu.
right? Nobody had the flu. They all had COVID. It was crazy. Everybody's wearing masks. So what happened with the next season now? Everybody got sick because no one built up immunity. No one got vaccines. No one built up immunity to protect themselves from getting the flu. And then the next season, the ERs are full of patients with flu. Imagine that, right? So masks, did they save lives? Absolutely. They did. You're right. It protected people. But then we didn't have the chance to have that herd immunity from everybody else getting it. You know?
Now all of a sudden, nobody's making fun of the little Chinese lady wearing the mask all the time.
Nope. So those are the things like that. So things to pay attention to. But immunizations, protective techniques, hand washing, these are all things that you need to do. You need to wash your hands. Using hand sanitizer just doesn't fix it, right? It's a temporary fix so you get to a sink, all right? Thank you, Kenny, for the swab too. I just the word for a minute there. My goodness. So protective measures. Proper cleaning and disinfecting of the ambulance and equipment will help prevent transfer of illnesses between patients. Once COVID came out, what were we doing to the back of the ambulance? We were spraying them down. We were using halt sprayers and chemicals after every single call. COVID's still around, and what are we not doing anymore? We're not spraying ambulances. We're not disinfecting like we used to do. COVID made us disinfect, and we became germaphobes pretty quickly. Everybody did it, right? And now we're not seeing it. Are we sick? Maybe because we're sick and tired of it. Maybe we've had enough. You know, there's things to think about. The disease is the disease. The infection is still there. COVID is still there, and we're seeing more of an uptick in COVID patients again. The only thing is, it's not as bad. COVID is never going to go away. Just like the flu will never go away. It just won't be as lethal. So routes of transmission. Not all infectious diseases are contagious, right? Like meningitis, right? Meningitis can be contagious, but it also cannot be contagious, depending if it's bacterial versus viral. Pathogens, a microorganism capable of causing a disease in a host, and the host being the organism or the person that's been invaded. Remember that contagious or communicable disease can be transmitted from one person to another. So transmission is the way of an infectious disease is spread, whether it be direct contact involves an organism moving from one person to another through touching without any intermediary. Example would be like blood or sexual transmission. Bloodborne pathogens are microorganisms obviously that present in human blood that can cause disease. Hepatitis and the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, are both transmitted this way as well. So more of the direct contact. They offer vaccines now for all that too. Hepatitis A, hepatitis B. You can get all these different vaccines done. And hepatitis B is a requirement and or you have to sign a declination. And the thing is with Hep B is that it's offered and paid for by your service. Indirect contact involves the spread of an infection between a patient and an infection to another person through an inanimate object. right? So if we sneeze, grab our hands, touch a doorknob, that person comes in, grabs the doorknob, opens the door, touches their face, now we're transmitting through indirect contact. We also have airborne transmission, spreading through infectious agent through mechanisms such as droplets or dust, coughing or sneezing. We have the foodborne transmission as well, involving contaminated food or water. And then a vector-borne transmission, which involves the spread of infection by animals or insects that carry an organism from one person or place to another, like fleas. A common vector-borne disease includes rabies or Lyme disease. Lyme disease is crazy stuff, as you can see here. Coughing, sneezing. Yeah, Bob, good point. I just happened to look down and saw that. One of the most dirtiest places in an ambulance, the handrail. One of the things that a lot of people don't clean. I'm not saying that not everybody does it, but a lot of people skip over that for some reason. So as far as risk reduction and prevention, all EMS personnel are trained in handling bloodborne pathogens and approaching patients who may have a communicable disease or infectious disease. Required by OSHA, training must also be provided for issues including blood and bodily fluid precautions and contamination precautions as well. So interesting fact is that New Hampshire doesn't require that, but Maine does. The CDC also developed standard precautions to prevent workers from coming into direct contact with germs. So designed to prevent workers from that, assume every person is potentially infected or can spread an organism in a healthcare setting. So apply infection control procedures like hand hygiene, gloves, gowns, masks, eye protection, face shields, HEPA respirators, look at soil, patient care equipment, environmental controls, textiles, laundry, needles, sharp objects, patient resuscitation, respiratory hygiene, coughing etiquette. So notify your designated designated officer if you are exposed. So every company, department, agency, whatever it may be, has to have a exposure or an infectious control officer, or they call it DICO, dedicated or designated infection control officer. You should know who that person is. And if there isn't one designated, then the chief of the service automatically gets it by default. As far as proper hand hygiene, which is a simple, most effective way to control transmission, is wash your hands, but using a substitute if there's no running water, like hand sanitizer as well. As far as hold on one second, guys. I'm back. Sorry about that. So gloves, obviously, standard of care. I don't need to go into what the gloves do. You guys wear them all the time. Eye protection was a requirement by the state of New Hampshire as far as wearing a mask as well. For any patient contact, obviously goggles are the best to utilize, as you can see, splash guards and things like that. Protect yourself, protect your face. As far as gowns go, provide protection from extensive blood splatter used with other PPE as well. Who's still wearing gowns now in COVID patients? Is anybody still fully gowning up when you come in contact with a COVID patient now? Okay, so I see Jen. Yes, you're still doing it. Who else is still wearing full protection now with COVID? All right, so if known COVID, yeah. Good. So people are actually still wearing the respirators and all that, Envos, that people have to utilize. Also may be worn in situations such as a field delivery or infant of an infant or a major trauma. Protect yourself. This is why we don't wear mesh shoes. We wear closed-toed shoes and solid shoes because blood can soak through the mesh. We're looking at surgical masks for fluid splatter as possible. Surgical masks on placement on the patient as well for any kind of communicable disease. We also have HEPA respirators for tuberculosis, influenza, or COVID-19 that's suspected. So we look at the HEPA respirators as well. And you are supposed to be fit tested to wear any kind of N95 type mask, any respirator. We also have mouth-to-mask, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, maybe transmit disease as well. So we have the masks as well with these here. If you look at the mouse on the screen, if you can see that, that device there is what they call a one-way valve. So you can blow air through, but if the patient vomits or breathes back out, it doesn't come back up into your lungs. Proper disposal of sharps. Please make sure you dispose of sharps appropriately. Please do not recap, break, or bend needles. All right, once you've used them, dispose of the needle. Please do not recap it and use it again later. Get a new needle. And you guys as AEMTs will be drawing up medications. Your employer cannot guarantee a 100% risk-free environment, okay? Your employer should follow OSHA and other regulations such as the CDC or the NFPA. There is an infection control plan for every service you work for. If not, you're in violation of state rules. So know what your infection control plan is and who your dedicated infection control officer is to notify of an exposure. So infection control routine, obviously infection control should be part of your daily routine, cleaning your cabinets, your floors, making sure things are going in the appropriate bags, clean the ambulance after each run on a daily basis at the end of your shift as well. Components of an infection control plan should be determination of an exposure, education and training. It's supposed to be doing that on a yearly basis. Maine has that as part of the Department of Labor. Hepatitis B vaccine program as well. You can also decline it, but you have to sign a declination. Wearing personal protective equipment and what equipment is required based upon your task hazard analysis. Cleaning and disinfection practices. Tuberculin skin test, fit testing, post-exposure management. Forms, exposure control, forms need to be filled out, and things like that. So there's a lot involved with the control policy, and your dedicated exposure control officer, DICO, should be very familiar with the policies and procedures that are there. So you should be able to make a phone call and have them help you out with that. As far as immunity goes, immunity comes from having been or vaccinated. Recovering from recovering from an infection of that germ as well. So germs may cause no symptoms in some patients and serious illness in others. And we saw that with, I keep bringing COVID up, but we saw that with COVID, where we had some patients that were intubated and passed away from it, and some that had a runny nose and a fever for a day or two, and then they were fine, right? It hit every one of us differently. But again, protection, protect yourself, preventative measures, maintain your personal health, get immunizations. Tuberculosis tests can test yearly. In Maine, that is a requirement on a yearly basis. Follow standard precautions, right? Standard precautions went tenfold when COVID came out because they were trying to protect us. General post-exposure management. If you are exposed to a patient's blood or bodily fluids, turn over the patient care to another EMS provider, and when safe to do so, clean the exposed area, rinse your eyes if necessary, and activate the infection control plan. Always make sure that you have extra clothing with you as well when you go to work, extra uniforms. Make sure you have showers readily available. So there, if you have to take a shower and clean yourself up to get into clean clothes, do so. If your stuff is infected, make sure you put it into a bag and do not do the laundry at home. Go to a laundromat. If your department has laundry facilities in your fire station, then do them there. Clean your clothing before you go home if you're exposed. You may not even realize you've been exposed until the hospital notifies you, okay? With that being said, Just replying back to a private chat message on here. Okay. Usually the supervisor on shift will be notified, or a chief officer, and saying, hey, your crew was exposed to this, right? Then we can notify the crew saying, hey, just so you know, you were exposed, go through this process next. And they may send you for a prophylaxis, may also be indicated as well for specific post-exposures. AMTs can also be involved in prevention. EMS providers are also considered high-profile role models. These are the top 10 causes of death in 2017, starting with heart disease and 10 being suicide. So begin protecting yourself as soon as you are dispatched. Seatbelts, shoulder harnesses, ensure equipment is restrained out back, don your PPE. Continue to protect yourself once on scene. Make sure the scene is well marked and well lit. Place warning devices. Park safe. If a motor vehicle crash, check the vehicle stability before attempting to access it. Patients trapped in a vehicle. We want to make sure the vehicle is stabilized first. If it's not stabilized, we don't go in. Then we're putting ourselves at risk. Take the necessary measures to secure the vehicle itself as well. Some ambulances may carry some wheel chocks. That's what it takes to stabilize the vehicle from rolling, and then do so, right? But don't go above and beyond what you're allowed to do, right? If you're not trained to do it, don't. Make sure there's plenty of light if it's dark out. If you're on the highway, make sure you have blocker units to protect you. Trying to answer your question, Bob. Your facilities that you work at should have laundry facilities there. And if they don't, they should look at trying to get a washer and dryer so you can wash your clothes at work. As far as hazmat goes, on arrival, look at the scene and try to read any labels, placards, identification numbers from a distance, perhaps using binoculars. New Hampshire and Maine requirements for an ambulance are a set of binoculars in the front of the vehicle. Always maintain a high index of suspicion when approaching the scene with a placard or label, because you're not exactly sure what it is. As especially trained and equipped hazardous materials team will be called to the scene to handle disposal of materials and removal of patients if need be. If it's a chemical where you can't go anywhere near, like radiation, for example, we're not going to rushing in. You show up to a scene, let's say Moody's Collision Center, and you see 6 people unconscious on the ground, we probably shouldn't be going inside. We need hazmat to show up, right? Or fire department that has SCBAs to protect their airways to go inside and bring the patient to us, right? And then if it comes down to decon, it's a whole other time. We'll talk about that later on in the program. We talk about special operations stuff, right? But again, we don't go into the hot zone. EMS is done in the cold zone, right? Vehicle crashes, obviously, are unstable or potentially unstable lethal situations. It could be down, be alert for hazards, make sure you have the right protective gear. Be conscious of the flow of traffic. You know what? Shut the road down. Protect yourself. Parks, you can easily leave the scene. Please do not find a way with an ambulance to block yourself in. That's the last thing that you want. Yes, Evan, material safety data sheets and what they call safety data sheets and SDSs now. So they've changed that for this whole global harmonization thing they went through about 8 years ago. But yes, fluid leakage, vehicle instability. There's a lot of different things that are out there that you got to protect yourself with. Again, park at least 100 feet away from all. Park uphill, upwind. That way, if there is a fuel leak and it's leaking down on the ground, it's not going to roll into your ambulance, ignite, light your ambulance on fire, right? So again, look around your scene, look up, look. Live. stay away. All right, don't go anywhere near it until the power is shut down. As far as lightning, threat, direct hit on the ground or current or ground current, stay away from any kind of drainage ditches, moist areas, or small depressions, or any kind of wet ropes. And move to the lowest possible area to avoid any kind of projections that way. As far as fire goes, again, hazards include smoke, oxygen deficiency, toxic gases, explosions, building collapses. So again, if you're not trained to do it, we don't go inside and provide this stuff, okay? Now, I know a lot of us that are in this class are firefighters, but I got to pretend you guys are not at this point in time. So as far as mass violence goes, for scene hazards can be created by civil disturbances, domestic disputes, crime scenes. So again, if it's a crime scene, you want to make sure you keep evidence tracking, and documentation is key for all these types of incidents as well. Large gatherings of potential hostile people, so bars, things like that, or parties, concerts. When several agencies respond, you need to know who is in charge, okay? Just because you show up does not mean that you're in command of the call. Report to command. They may also have you go to a secondary or primary staging area where there'll be a staging officer to direct you where you need to go. If you and your partner are alone at a scene that has become hostile, call law enforcement personnel immediately. Never put yourself or put an object between yourself and the exit. All right. Never turn your back on a patient. Okay. Always back out of the door and then take off and go. If necessary, remove yourself from the scene until you can safely begin treatment. If the scene is not safe and you back away from a patient, that is not neglect. You're not abandoning your patient. Right? You're doing that for safety, and then you always go back when it's safe. Behavioral emergencies, obviously emergencies that do not have a clear physical cause. The cause may be physical or like hypoglycemia or a head injury, things like that that could be causing that behavioral emergency. So most behavioral emergencies do not pose a threat, but be aware of the we'll get more into this in behavioral when we get to that section, but be aware of the physical findings, like what you see, the body language of how this patient presents to you. Evaluate the patient in terms of behavioral or psychiatric emergency that may lead to a violent patient reaction. So keep yourself in a distance enough to be able to protect yourself if you need to move. As far as protective clothing, again, be familiar with the types that are out there: cold weather, turnout gear, boots, helmets, whatever you guys are issued and trained to use. Eye protection, ear protection, skin protection, body armor. That's becoming very popular now. And a lot of services have bulletproof vests that you have to wear on certain calls that you respond to. Inspect clothing and gear regularly. Make sure that it is safe and ready to use. Remember that EMS is a high stress job, okay? So know the causes of stress and how to deal with them. General adaptation syndrome, like alarm response to stress, reaction to resistance, recovery, or exhaustion. Again, you have to have time for yourself. You got to be able to understand that this is a high stress job that we do. And most of you have been in this field for a while. You understand it. You know how to cope with that stress. You know how to deal with that stress. You know what your stress relievers are. But there are some of you in this class that are still fairly new at this, right? Protect yourself. Talk to your loved ones at home. Reach out for help. Please do not keep this stuff bottled in, right? Eventually it will take that toll, and we don't want to end up being a statistic, right? We want to make sure that we are taken care of. Signs of psychological signs of stress include increased respirations and heart rate, increased blood pressure, cool, clammy skin, dilated pupils, muscle tension, and perspiration. So the physiologic response involves interactions of an endocrine and nervous system. We're going to get more into this during anatomy and physiology and pathophys, but commonly known as the fight or flight response, resulting in a positive exercise or negative like shift work, long hours, or stressors. We'll talk about norepinephrine release and everything else in the sympathetic nervous system as we go down the road in this program. Other physiologic manifestations of stress also include respiration, dilated pupils, muscle tension, things like that, which we already talked about. Other stress reactions would be like an acute stress reaction occur during stressful situations characterized by feeling nervous or excited with increased ability to focus. Delayed stress reactions manifest after a stressful event, like the AEMT is able to focus and function during the crisis, but left with a nervous, excited that strategy that continues to build after the call is over. So you got to find a way to relieve stress. A lot of times you'll see these during critical calls or calls you may not be comfortable with. The AEMT is also unable to shake off the effects of after a stressful situation as well. Some other acute severe stressors or critical incident stress are sudden, services severe, and usually stressful or emotional. So even by emergency standards, they include mass casualty incidents, serious injury or traumatic death of a child, crash with injury caused by emergency services providers, or death or serious injury of a coworker, or a line of duty death. PTSD can also develop after a psychologically distressing event. If you've been in EMS for a long time, I can guarantee you that you have some form of PTSD. Guarantee you have it, right? The thing is what's going to trigger it to kick in. And you got to learn people's trigger points. Characterized by re-experiencing the event over and over. Over responding to stimuli that recall the event. Social or psychosocial or psychological problems from failure to resolve traumatic stress or grief can also result in a delayed reaction, what they call a delayed stress syndrome as well. Or symptoms that include depression, startle reactions, flashback phenomena, or dissociative exposures or episodes, sorry. Some other warning signs include irritability towards coworkers, friends, and family, the inability to concentrate, difficult sleeping, increased sleeping or nightmares, sadness, anxiety, guilt or hopelessness, loss of appetite, which is a gastrointestinal disturbance or isolation. So these are things you want to pick up on your coworkers, and if you start seeing this, talk to them, or direct them in a way that they could talk to somebody else. Some tactics that alleviate the stress, obviously change in work hours or cut back on overtime. Talk about your feelings. Try to adopt a relaxed or a philosophical outlook. Minimize physical response to stress. So there's a lot of things that can happen with this. Develop and address acute stress situations, potentially decreasing PTSD. Theoretically confronts responses to critical incident stresses, diffuses them. So CISM can occur formally, so you can have a big debriefing in a group, or it can be one-on-one. Something to add to that, though. Critical incident stress debriefings are not there to critique the call, okay? They're there to talk about your feelings. Normally, they leave cell phones out. They have healthy foods available for you, and the doors are usually shut, and they sit in a circle. They have a trained professional in the room to kind of help with that. So when personnel are assessed while resting, CSM also occur like on an ongoing scene as well. So when they're resting, we can actually talk with people before re-entering the scene, or we can do it during the scene demobilization. We're breaking stuff down. I am a very big and firm believer in after incident reviews as well. To kind of go over the incident. This is really not CISM, but it helps break down the incident and things that we could have done better as well. Burnout. I'm sure a lot of us have all been there. Where we have symptoms of impending burnout would be chronic fatigue and irritability, lack of desire to report to work, and obviously feelings of being, overwhelmed, overeating, smoking, or abusing drugs or alcohol. So, I mean, we've all probably been there at some point in time where we've lacked the desire to go to work, where we've been chronically fatigued or irritable, and you just need to take that time off, right? Take vacations. And I can tell you right now, and I'm sure some of you guys can probably attest to this as well. COVID put a big hurt on burnout, right? So looking at the different fire departments that we have out there, there are people that belong to fire departments. So I know, Kenny, you're with Oxford. Have you seen a decrease in staffing? At all? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I see it. That's why your chat. I just had to pull the box back up. We're seeing that. Anybody work full time at all? I know most of you guys do work full time. Anybody's full time fire? Are you full time fire, Kenny? Up there? Or are you per diem?
Per diem with full-time hours.
Fair enough. We're all there. Mandatory force overs, holdovers, right? So we're seeing that. I know a guy that works for Laconia Fire, and they forced him over for 96 hours straight. 96 hours, 4 24-hour shifts in a row, because they get forced over being the junior guy. Burnout. Because of COVID, what did they do? Maine EMS said anybody that holds an EMS license, if you weren't COVID vaccinated, you couldn't hold a license in the state. That also included dispatchers, right? I believe it was dispatchers as well, because EMD is an EMS license in the state of Maine. And they said if you didn't have it, you couldn't work in EMS, healthcare, and healthcare as a whole. So when that happened, people left. A lot of people left their jobs, then forced other people to have to come in and work even more hours. So burnout hit. And this is why we're not seeing as many people. I am very happy that we have 15 people in this AEMT class. It's 15 more people that are going to get a license and start working at a higher license level. You know,
But Maine,
what was that?
Kevin, but Maine also had a waiver that you could sign to where you didn't need to get that COVID vax over here in Maine.
Right, but that waiver happened after the fact.
You're right.
Yeah, initially they said you couldn't even work, and then people were like, well, wait a minute, now you're taking our God-given rights, so we don't want to be vaccinated.
Right,
You know?
and I guess they also feared that they were going to lose too many providers to that, because a lot of us, including myself, were kind of wary to get vaccinated at first because it was a new thing that just came out, and we weren't sure how it was going to react to people,
Right.
and how it was going to react to us in general. I mean, I know I was very skeptical on, I wanted to see it out there for a minute before I was like on board for it.
Right. Well, I get it. I 100% understand. You know, so preventing burnout, take care of your own health. Learn how to relax. Do not make unreasonable demands. Debrief after tough calls. You got to have these conversations, right? Vacation time is real. Take it, right? Take vacations. Go places, right? Even if it's a staycation at home, be away from work, right? Spend time with your family, things like that. Compassion fatigue, obviously gradual lessening of compassion over time. Symptoms include high absenteeism, difficult relationships with coworkers. Yeah, right. What's vacation? I know. As we all work 100 hours plus a week. Aggressive behavior towards patients, strong negative attitudes towards work. When you're hitting this, you've got to take some time away, or change shifts, or go to a different firehouse, or whatever you may be working. Change things around. Change your scenery. Sometimes that might just be all you need. Signs and symptoms may be subtle, but and are not present all the time. So pick up on this stuff with your coworkers. We're almost done. Recognize that you and your colleagues are becoming overwhelmed, right? Me as a shift supervisor, I try to make sure that my crew is always taken care of. Try to help build morale. I try to buy them company meals. I try to do stuff to keep them, wanting to be to work. Make sure they're recognized. Make sure that they're doing okay. If they need relief, they need to take a break. They've done like 4 or 5 calls in a row. Do you need a break for a little bit? We can cover that. There's things that we can do to help with that, even as managers, even to as just crew members. Hey, I'll take the next call for you. I know you've been overwhelmed. You've been working a lot. I'll take the next one.
Even
Again, go ahead.
even a simple good job, you did a good job today, goes miles sometimes for some people.
Absolutely.
I know it does for me. At the end of a call, if my coworker or even my supervisor comes up to me and says, "Hey, you know what, Bob, you did a good job today," that's amazing.
Yep, and just that little bit can make a difference. But again, look at your employees and things like that too, and see what they can do to kind of help you out. All right, let's move forward here. We're almost done. Nutrition, I say eat well. Some of us work in transfer world, like working for IFT services, and what do you do to eat? Well, you got McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Taco Bell, things like that. You don't have time to stop and eat. Well, you know what? Step away from the fast food and bring your own food in. Red Bull. Yep, I know someone that drinks Red Bull by the case. But this is what happens though. People get into something quick, easy. Okay, well, I need some sugar. I'm on my 80th hour of being awake. I need to drink an energy drink. And yeah, I'm the same way. I'll get rushes from Aroma Joe's. I'll stop at Dunks, whatever. And I shouldn't be having sugar at all. It's very bad. But with that being said, though, we do it. Coffee, okay? And I think that's like an EMS thing. If you don't drink coffee, you can't be like an EMS provider type thing. 7-Eleven sandwiches, yep. And a lot of coffee. But that's what we live off of. We live off that caffeine fix. But believe it or not, drinking water is actually better. So there's a lot of things to think about. That's all. Just try to be healthy. Exercise. If you're sitting around at work, it doesn't take much to get out and walk around the building a couple of times just to move some blood around. I'm not saying you have to go to the gym 5 days a week and lift 500 pounds, but do something. Sean, green aliens, exactly. Too many of those. Another thing too as well is if you do not use tobacco, if you don't use it, don't start it. Okay, if you are using it, try to quit the best you can. Sleep, regular and uninterrupted. Well, who gets that, right? Quality, not length of time, is important. Even if you can get 4 hours of sleep, right? 4 hours of sleep. If it can be good quality sleep for 4 hours, right? That's a good thing to have. Disease prevention. Know your family's health history and adjust your lifestyle if necessary. Well, this is huge, and I know we don't all follow it. I get it. But we got to try our best. That's all we can ask for. Balancing work, family, and health. You have to find that balance. You have to be good at time management, right? You got to find that balance. You have to take at least 1 day a week to yourself. I'm telling you right now. And this is not an easy program. Advanced EMT is like paramedic. You've got to have 1 day of no books, no studying, and make that your day with your family, your time, right? And it'll help you pass a lot of these exams too. Substance abuse. Acceptable consumption is 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks a day for men. I don't know who came up with those statistics, right? If you drink alcohol, it's not a bad thing. Just don't get hammered every night. Increase the use of adversely affects the body system. Excuse me. Both prescription and illicit drugs can also be abused and misused as well. Take only as prescribed as directed, and if restricted drug is prescribed, notify the employer. Let them know what's going on. Last thing you want is to get into an accident. If you get into an accident, 99% of the time, you're going to be drug tested if you're with an emergency vehicle. Diversity on the job. Remember, each person is different. Okay? So communicate with coworkers and patients in a respectful way. Cultural diversity is a resource. Learn how to relate and communicate effectively with coworkers and patients from various backgrounds. You know what? It may save your butt on a call one day. Be a role model for the new AEMTs by showing them the value of diversity. Use appropriate terminology when referring to patients, right? Don't use slang words. Recognize that there are legitimate differences in how various cultures respond to stress. You know, we work in different areas. You know, working in, I'll pick on Bob for a minute since Bob likes to interact with the class quite often. Working in Berlin is different than working in Tamworth. You know, I think, let me look at the roster here. Kobe, you're still on. You work down here in North Conway. Is that different than Berlin?
Oh yeah, big
Absolutely.
difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Jen, you're still there, right? I think you're still. I'm not sure if you're on a call or not. Yeah. Okay.
I'm still here.
No, there you are. I wasn't sure if you were on a call or not.
Just driving, sorry.
Working in Wilmington is gonna be different than working in New Hampshire, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. A lot of differences. Right. So again, learn the different cultures. Learn. It definitely will help you out in the long term. Sexual harassment, unwelcome verbal or physical conduct, or overheard conversation. Right? We can't have any of that. Quid pro quo, hostile work environment. You do this for me, I'll do this for you, and you get that promotion. Perceptions, not intent, matter. Keep lines of communication open. Report harassment to a supervisor immediately and keep notes. Death and dying, because we're almost done. We have about 7 more slides to go. Death is likely to occur somewhere other than at home, quite suddenly or after a prolonged terminal illness. Remember, there's 5 stages: denial, anger, hostility, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. All right? People can't go from denial to acceptance in 5 minutes. Sometimes they can. Okay? There's a terminal illness. Sometimes they've already started to accept that. There's something that happens quite suddenly, they're going to be in denial. Then they're going to get angry. You have to understand the 5 stages. Because remember, we're going to cardiac arrest. We're going to the fatalities. We're seeing this stuff in the field. And we're probably going to be at the anger phase, the denial or anger phase when we show up. You're going to be there to help. All right. As far as working with family members, use special care with dying patients and family members. Please don't walk in and say, all right, well, Christmas is canceled now. Right? No longer playing records. Right? We can't go around these homes and saying this kind of stuff. We have to be sincere with the family. Do not say you know how they feel, because you don't know how they feel. They feel differently than you probably do. Allow the patient and the family to grieve. Right? If they want to be around the body to say goodbye, then let them do that. Right? As long as it's not a crime scene. Maintain a professional attitude. Don't walk into a house and a patient who's close to near death and say, oh, they're circling the drain. Better get going. Right? Those are things that we probably don't want to say around family. And remember, even if they're unconscious, their brain's still functioning and they can still hear you as a patient. So be careful what you say. As far as dying patients, know that death will happen. Right? So do not make light of a patient's pain or fears. As you can see here, the critically dying patient here. Dealing with the death of a child. It's tragic and a dreaded event. A lot of times, this is a career ending for a lot of providers when they have a death of a child. Acknowledge the facts of the death, and if possible and appropriate, let the parents hold the child. There's nothing wrong with that. Right? It helps with that process of the 5 stages. Do not overload the patients with a lot of information. They want to hold their child. Right? Let them do that. Talk with them afterwards. Let the patients know who you are, what you're doing, and that you are attending to their immediate needs. Avoid sad, grim comments. All right. Give patients the opportunity to express their fears and concerns. Let them talk to you. Respect religious customs and patient needs. That's huge, right? Orient the patient. Be honest with them. Do not tell them everything's going to be okay, right? Because what if it's not? We're going to do the best for your child. Okay, that's being honest. We're going to do the best we can. It's not a lie. Deal with the possible initial refusal of care, right? Allow for hope. Locate and notify family members. Help out injured and critically ill children. Care for them as they would with any other patient. And ask a responsible adult to accompany the child, right? Do the best you can to help out. And to end with this, if uncertain situations, if unclear, and a true medical emergency exists, contact medical control about the need to transport. Many minor signs may be early indicators of severe illness or injury. So if in doubt, require patient consent and transport, right? If it's an ALS type call and a patient doesn't want to go to the hospital, you should always consult with medical control. All right, so ending with this, let me just turn off the recording really quick and we can have a quick discussion and then we'll be out of here for the night.